Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 194. This is Carl.
This is Jody.
And there's only two of us this go around.
Dun, dun, dun.
Want to tell you right now, this show is sponsored by Lee Langston, one of our fantastic Patreon members. Thank you very much, Lee. I very much appreciate your support. And Jody and Justin and Adon's backs are all going to appreciate your support when we get some new chairs in here for those guys.
Man,
so they can stop using my old dining room chairs to sit in for 3 hours at a time.
I think our butts done conquered these pads.
Those pads have been squashed. So this episode, as you will hear in just a moment, I have been traveling a whole lot in October, which is why the episode is a little bit delayed. We're trying to get back on schedule for November, but this episode kind of doesn't follow our normal format. Well, we do hobby progress, that kind of thing. I have a little thing to talk about, and then we have an interview with Black Library author Justin Hill about some of the Black Library stuff he's doing, but also about Aeronautica Imperialis, which I played with him, as you'll hear in a little bit. And he's just a great guy, so real fun to talk with. We talk a little bit about Nova. It's been a while. Next episode, we're coming back on format with our coverage of Inquisitor, the game.
Can't wait.
It'll be fun. But Elite Choice.
Yeah.
Let's leap right into that. My Elite Choice is, and I bounced around to a couple, but finally I landed on Vitaly Rukoswev. Geez, I hope that's not an acronym for some podcast I'm unaware. No, Vitaly Rukoswev, who painted the Magos Manipulus and Cybernetica Datasmith. He used colors that I just absolutely loved. They're browns and tans and that kind of thing. The models look converted, like one has like a power fist. Just a beautiful representation. I think he's been listening to the show for about a year and just recently joined the group and posted like right out of the starting gate. I was like, oh man, those models look really, really nice.
Sweet.
Really well done. And then I got to throw out quick. I know we're supposed to pick one, but this is not really a hobby thing.
Okay.
Was the honorable mention, Dale Omsbaugh posted a picture. It's not his kid, but it's one he found of a kid in Imperial Fist armor.
Okay, yeah.
With the bionic eye and the bolter. And I was just like, that is an amazing costume for a kid that's maybe 12 years old.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Yeah.
It was just awesome looking. So, like, better than I could do. So, I don't know what that dad works in, but
foam, apparently.
Holy smokes, it was incredible.
No, that was super neat.
So, anyway, that's mine. What's yours?
All right. I'm going to, maybe this is, usually we go with models or somebody had a cool image or whatever. And I think I probably actually default to using these kind of a lot. Actually,
Jeremy Woods?
No, I have yet to do that. Although, by God, I would have.
Once he finishes this project, I will lift the ban on Jeremy Woods.
Hall of Fame. No, he's Hall of Fame. We're done.
Okay.
All right. So no. Earlier today, actually, we're at Thursday for when we're recording. Yep. Chad Strunk posted this morning, and a lot of people have done this, and I can tell you very sincerely that I know Carl and Adon and Justin feel the same way.
Yep.
Really appreciate posts like this. So this is what he had to say. He
So
says,
if you want to suck up to us,
we'll take it.
we're shallow.
Or what he says was, for the record, I really appreciate this community every day, especially after the last few days in other Facebook groups. Thanks a ton to the Independent Characters for making me not want to ditch the hobby this week. And what I will say is, Chad, and I said this to his post, the hobby is better for having you in it, buddy. Hang in there.
Yeah.
But that forum page, I will echo exactly what Chad had to say of, I really don't follow just because I'm on the show, I do follow some of the media, if you will, the reporting groups. Yeah. But even those I've cut down to almost nothing because the community page now does such a good job.
Like Bella Lost Souls, I can't tell you the last time I went to that site.
No.
Because the community page, I just go there every day.
Right.
And I probably go there like 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Didn't they add anything?
Yeah, today was...
I got to order my action figure.
Today, oh, yeah. Hey, get in on that, folks. Action figures, limited numbers. But... yeah, Chad, I'm right there with you. You are not alone in appreciating that community page, and I know a lot of folks do. And it is great that you all keep it so positive. For those of you who are members, just keep enjoying the hobby. That's all you got to do. It seems easy right up until you're not on the community.
And that may seem a little sappy, but I don't think it is.
No,
it's who was I talking with? I mean, I spent a long time talking with a member of the community team when I was out at Warhammer World, but also with John French and just discussing the community and why. And Doug, when I came back up from Southern California with Doug Neal, Doug was talking about this community and how it's interesting that like he met friends in Texas when he moved to Texas through that community that are and he's like, and we hit it off right away. I'm like, because it's like-minded people in this group, right? And when somebody's not to say we all have to have the same thoughts. We don't. Like you and I disagree about stuff, fairly frequently. But I mean, not angrily,
no,
and when you have people that can communicate like that and can are convinced to have fun with the game, then any of us is interchangeable. This is why I love going to Adepticon, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But like I go there and people come up to me and say, "Oh, I love the show," and ball, such and such, and thanks so much for what you do. And I'm like, yeah, we're like kindred spirits. Like
right.
Immediately we have something in common that we start, talking about, or I'll try to talk about not painting Black Legion guys or something. and they're like, yeah, I know you don't, you're a loser. But there's something powerful there.
Yeah.
And like Eric Beers and Ian have made friends. Like they didn't know each other prior to this, but they met through the community. And
right.
It's like, hey, I think you guys are near each other. Now and Eric's a great dude, and we met at Adepticon, and
Ian's mostly tolerable.
Yeah, when he's not complaining about horses.
Jeez, man.
But
yeah, exactly. Like that blows my mind.
I didn't know those guys. They're over in Minnesota.
And I didn't realize those guys didn't know each other before, because when we all got together, I was like, oh, these guys know each other. I'm the oddball out. And I was like, oh, wait, no, we're all exactly. There is community is the right word.
Yeah.
Like, and why would you not be excited about that? And
the reality is we work hard to make that thing. And sometimes we make difficult choices in order to keep that community whole. And, this is why often you'll see me post, look, if you don't listen to the show, that's fine to be here, but you need to understand the spirit of this group and the spirit of the show.
Right.
Here's the community guidelines. Please go read them, because we're not shy about removing somebody, even somebody who does provide good content, for not following the spirit of the rule. And as you know, recently we had to remove somebody again. And it's very rare. I think we have removed, I think last time I talked about it, I said like a handful, maybe we're at 2 hands now, but it's like a handful and one,
Right.
And we don't make those decisions lightly. None of us make that decision without consulting the other admins and say, what do you think? And
right.
What do you think? And there's been times I go to Shell and I'm like, what do you think of this post? Like, right. Tell me what your thoughts are. Like, good, bad, let me know. Am I overreacting? And it's all in support of making sure it's a fun environment,
right.
And a supportive environment.
And that, so, Chad, as it was, can continue to come here and go, that's right, this is for fun.
Yep.
It is a good time.
And it's for you, Chad.
Yeah. So thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And then I wanted to talk a little bit on that point.
Yeah.
Seth Hancock made a post about toxic fandom today.
Yeah, man,
posted
interesting.
Posted a link to a wrestler. I don't follow wrestling. Ed and Blake could tell me who that guy is. And it's a 2.5-minute video where he talks about really hating wrestling fans. He loves them because they're fans, but the toxic negativity around, opinion. And I think the term he uses, opinion, is the lowest form of intelligence or something like that.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, where we can all develop opinions. Lord knows I have my own opinions. That corn lawnmower thing is really dumb looking. But I don't care how well it's painted, Jody. But how you express those opinions and what opinions you decide to keep to yourself and what opinions you feel like the need to share are really what defines you.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. It's so for those who would like to check it out, exactly as Carl said, Seth Hancock, you can look up his link to it on the Independent Characters, or it's Al Snow on Toxic Fandom Ruining Wrestling is the brief conversation. And I love, as somebody who literally tries to teach teenagers who have nothing but opinions, how to express themselves in a way that is more mature and more sophisticated. I love the way that he breaks down at least how he sees it, of going, there's an opinion, and then there's information, and then there's knowledge. Right. And those are three distinct different states.
Yeah.
And you don't need information or knowledge to have an opinion.
This is true.
You just get to have an opinion.
Hence his point. This is the lowest form of intelligence.
And I think there is something to it that all of us kind of taking a minute to go, it's okay to have an opinion. Just be aware it's just your opinion.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, that's just your opinion, man.
It's just your opinion, man. And you may have some information, but that doesn't mean you know. It means you have information. Yeah. And those are very different levels. And that nuance of understanding how an argument is made and where the speaker is coming from, because we all have keyboards and we all have screens and we all have opinions. Yeah. That doesn't make anybody right. Right? That just means you have an opinion and you're welcome to it.
And the reality is it's hard to change your opinion.
Yeah.
Like, it's super hard. I catch myself doing it all the time where I'm like, no, it's like this. And then I'm like, all right, wait a minute. And I'm not always the best at that.
No, nobody is.
But I do know I can evolve and correct myself. There were opinions I held when we started this show that have changed drastically since then. Yeah. So, I mean, if you go and you listen to like episodes, I don't know, God help you if you listen to like episodes 5 through 10 or something like that. But if you listen to like our earlier episodes, like in the 20s and stuff, maybe the 30s.
Well, to speak nothing of, the times change.
Times change.
Opinions you had to keep it hobby centric, opinions you had about how the game operated
and how it should be played.
They're back in 3rd, 4th, 5th edition.
Oh, yeah.
Were valid then, but it's 8th edition.
Let me give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
Right. Back when Zach was on the show, I was playing in tournaments, and Jeff and I were trying to convince Zach, come play in this tournament at KublaCon. And he's like, well, I'm not really into tournaments anymore, and it's just not for me. I don't want to do tournaments. I did tournaments. I'm done with it. I'm like, come on, And I remember Jeff and I talking about, man, why won't Zach play in tournaments? Like, he's a super good player. He could totally do well and all this. Now, I see a lot of what Zach said. It took me time to get to the point where Zach was, where I'm just like, yeah, I'm done with tournaments. That's not the kind of game I really want to play. Sure, I could go play them. I'm not as good a player as Zach was, but, I'd rather spend my time doing something a little different. And so now I've evolved from where I was at that time, never going to be a top player of 40K. I might luck myself into. I was always a middle of the pack, middle upper of the pack player at events. And now I'm just like zero interest in that. Like totally, I like to say evolved, but I've just changed.
Right.
And so that's okay. But I do find it, and this post that Chad made kind of speaks to this toxic fandom. And people were asking, like, what are people upset about in these other groups? Because for some people, Independent Characters is their group, the only group they're really going to. And there's like a lot of complaining about the Marvel deal with 40K and how it's going to ruin, the Grimdark. And you remember, 6-7 months ago when people, maybe even longer than that, when the young adult books came out.
The Warhammer Adventures.
Yeah, they were going to destroy the Grimdark. What is this? Well, it's not targeted at you, dude. Yeah. Relax a little bit. Oh, now these Bandai action figures are going to just ruin
all 9,000 of them.
Really? Really? God, I hope I get one of those. I swear to God. I set my alarm and everything on my phone.
When I saw that today, I literally thought, I bet Carl just set his alarm.
You better believe. I am.
Only.
Okay, so let me give you my opinion. I am disappointed that they're only doing like the Ultramarine Primaris Marine. Like, I thought it was going to be like a line of action figures, and like, maybe I could get like Imperial Fist guy, and maybe I could get like Ultramarine guy, and and now it sounds like it's limited number. Maybe it will get them to expand more.
Well, I think when all 9,000 sell in 12 minutes,
they might rethink it.
They might revisit this.
God,
Bandai might
sell that fast.
I think
They're
will.
going to.
They're going
I know they're going to.
So I'll tell you why.
Maybe I should move my alarm up.
You should. You want to know how you want to. So my information, not knowledge, but information that's informing my opinion of why they're going to sell out in 12 minutes is because all along I've been like, man, those are neat.
Yep.
But that's it. As not a Marine player, I went, that's neat, full stop.
Yeah.
Today I saw there's only going to be 9,000 and I instantly wanted one more.
Oh man, they got you so
And
good.
I went, but
so
to
good.
checking your bias, checking your information, your opinions, I did have that moment of going, wait a minute, I now want one more because they're scarce. Nothing has changed except that I can't just have one whenever I want.
Right.
The FOMO.
Right.
But I'm not actually missing. So I went, I've already.
You're not going to buy one.
I'm not going to buy one. I backpedaled immediately to, I can't wait to see Carl's.
I've been waiting for them to come out. Like I wanted to buy a bunch of them.
Speaking of go to old episodes, I guarantee you somewhere in an old episode is you talking about this.
Oh, I'm sure.
I guarantee it's
I'm
out
sure.
there. Some listener right now is like, actually it was in 65. And if you are that listener, God bless you.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's a true thing where like, as we become, the other point he makes in the video is familiarization breeds contempt.
Yeah.
Right. The more familiar you become with something, the more contempt you hold for it. With 40K and me, I have not had that experience. I have had that experience in other things. Mm-hmm. But for me, the more familiar I get with it, the more amazed I get at how deep the rabbit hole is.
Sure.
As I'll talk about later today in the show and tell section, like I was like, oh my God, I thought I knew it all. And then I saw this thing. I'm like, I've never seen this before. This is awesome.
Oh, they got toys, man.
Yeah, it's incredible. So I don't understand why the need to get so the vitriol, the anger about, hey, they've done a deal with Marvel. Well, yeah, they tried to launch comic books under some other line and it kind of petered out, it seemed, which was really disappointing because the comics weren't too bad. Aaron was writing some of them. Marvel has a long tried history of creating comic books and knows how to do it and has artists, and GW will have input because they never let their IP run on its own. They're always like, it must be approved by us. They're probably going to utilize guys like Dan Abnett, who writes for Marvel.
Seems like kind of a reasonable
kind of
assumption.
did like a whole series on Guardians of the Galaxy that ended up becoming kind of the theme for the movie that they took. If you go to Guardians of the Galaxy and you look
you're saying
you look at the credits,
make a 40K movie. That's
Dan
what you're
Abnett's,
saying right now.
buddy. Yeah. I would hope at some, maybe.
Yeah, that's always.
I wanted Judge Dredd too. I wanted Dredd too. Dredd did not do well. Yeah. And Dredd is such a good movie.
I really enjoy it. I did read that's funny you bring that up because I literally just read an article. Maybe Don posted it and that's why I read it. An article about that particular film just the other day.
Don posted it.
About how it, in a weird way, the Stallone one actually, for fans of the comic, it's a little more accurate actually. It makes a very convincing argument. I'm gonna say no. to stay 40K centric. Yeah, there is the part of me that would love to see a Hollywood budgeted, done properly 40K version, but on the other hand,
it'd have to be R-rated.
Whoa, buddy!
It'd have to be R-rated, and look, I saw what they did with the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah, but look what they did with Lord of the Rings.
Then they did Lord of the Rings,
which I was cringing at.
When Dungeons and Dragons the movie came out, I was super excited to go see it, and then I realized there's a Wayne's brother in it, and I knew we were in trouble. And then I saw it, and people who didn't play Dungeons and Dragons were like, "Yeah, this is what you're all excited about," and I'm like, "This is not Dungeons.
That guy's not on my team.
This is not Dungeons and Dragons." And then Lord of the Rings came out, and I'm like, "This is what I was referring to." So anyway, listen, we're not going to come up with an answer for the toxic thing.
Yeah, we are.
We just
enjoy your hobby.
We just create the best community we can, and I hope people enjoy it. And sometimes you got to have a little patience with us when somebody steps way out of line and takes us a few minutes or hours to take action. So, but in general, I think it goes very, very well.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of support from you guys that we really, really appreciate. So this episode you will find, as I said earlier, is in a little bit different format. I have been traveling pretty much the entire month of September. This is the first time I've seen Jody in probably a month and a half. And really, this travel started with and I'll go into a little bit of personal stuff here, but the travel started with a tour of University of Washington, where my kid Tucker's going. We flew up there, did the orientation for a parent, orientation for the student. They had 2-day orientation. I had a single-day orientation. And then we flew back, and we had just a nightmare flying back. We ended up having to sleep in the airport, and it was just a total disaster of a trip. But I will say, as your kid gets older and they start getting ready to go to college, they do this thing called I'm going to use the phrase, not the phrase that our friend used, but I'm going to say pooping the nest.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They become kind of intolerable to be around. I turned to my wife, I'm like, I am really not enjoying being around Tucker these days. They're 18. They're acting like a jerk. What are you doing? And so I kind of had concerns. I'm like, what have we done wrong? Yeah, we were too soft on this kid. We should have been a jerk. On that trip, dealing with the adversity that we ran into, which was incredibly frustrating. I saw my kid in a whole new light. Like, we saw a guy flip out at the customer care people when our flight got canceled. After we had to go to another gate to get hotel stay and all that, which we ended up not being able to get, I watched my kid, unprovoked by me, go up to the customer care people and say, hey, I'm really sorry you had to deal with that guy. That's just not cool. And those, just to try to make those people feel better. I saw my kid in a whole different light. So I don't know where I'm going with that, other than I was really impressed with my kid.
Well, so, yeah, there you go. You're allowed to be a proud parent.
I did that. Then I flew off to Belfast for work, followed by the trip to Nottingham and Warhammer World. And then John French and Ed, as you'll hear later, we met and played a game, Conan, the box game.
Oh, right. I saw that.
So good.
Yeah. Have you...
Like, when that Kickstarter, they're going to do an expansion for a Kickstarter that's going to come out. I know this isn't 40K related. There's going to be a little bit of that content this episode because it's so long. That Kickstarter is going to have a new expansion come out, and I'm pretty sure they're going to release like everything in the Kickstarter. If you buy in, you get all the previous stuff. I'm super backing that. Like, I have the basic game. I'm just going to back it again and get the whole thing.
So you're aware of the Batman game?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you played that one?
Not as interested in Batman as a theme as I am as
I will
Conan.
say, so Matt and I played.
I heard they're similar.
Very same core mechanic of the sliding bad guy board, and the heroes are very with
the energy that moves from thing to thing.
Yeah, man, just hoot. Just
so good, right?
A hoot. Just a great time.
Well, let me tell you, the Conan one is super good too. Yeah. So we did that. We talked a lot. We had fun. It was a great trip. Wasn't my best trip to Nottingham, just because I ran into travel issues. Again, it seems like every plane I get on these days is getting delayed. Before even that, I had to fly out to Utah for work. So I spent a couple of days in Utah. That flight got delayed and blah, blah, blah. And they actually had us get off the plane at one point and then get back on the plane. And the captain, you could just hear it in his voice. He's like, I'm really sorry to say this. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but we need everybody to get their stuff and get off the plane. It's like, oh my God. So
at least you got to get back on.
A lot of travel there. I come back from Europe 2 days late. I go to work for one day. The next day, we rent a van and drive up to University of Washington, that's a long drive. That's a 14, 15 hour drive from here. We did it in two lengths, but we ended up leaving at like 5 o'clock at night. So at like 4 a.m, I get to a hotel that we can stay at, and then we continue on. My wife and I leave our kid at college, which is hugely traumatic. I have much more respect for Adon and anybody that has their kid go off to college at this point, because I didn't realize quite the impact it has on you. And my impact is I'm just jealous they're getting to go to University of Washington, because that is a beautiful college. And then Michelle and I fly back. We get here, and then something else happened. I had to go somewhere else just recently, and then
You're in LA?
I flew down to LA. Yeah, geez, see, that's how scatterbrained I am. I flew down to
living vicariously through you, man.
Flew down to San Diego for our Geek in South with Ed and Blake from Life After the Cover Save, and
that looks
a couple
like
other guys,
time.
Campos, Cheyenne, all those guys, and Doug Neal, who is now moving back to our area from Texas. That we're super happy he's coming back. He's not quite as he's happy to see us.
He can get over it,
especially you and Josh. He really wants to hook up with you guys, but he wanted to retire in Texas. Things didn't take the turn. He's got to support the wife, who's just a powerhouse of a executive.
You know, fellas out there,
I'm jealous.
We talk, actually, this comes up a lot of like how many of us nerds that talk on this show are like, well, I don't know what I did right, but way out of my league. Yeah. And Doug, in a weird way, is a victim of his own success here. I think I might be living a little bit of that in a very different way.
Yeah. Matt. Boy.
Yeah. Matt, good luck, buddy.
Matt's like, yeah, I don't know how she married me.
Nobody does. It's a mystery. No, Matt's okay.
Matt's a good looking guy.
But yeah, I mean, the reality is that when you do really well, man, you better be willing to support that amazing powerhouse that you latched onto, because that's how that works. So, but it worked out for us. So Samina was already amazing, and now she just got way cooler.
Doug
in my
and
book.
Samina to me are kind of like George Clooney and Amal, his wife that he just married. Like I was like, man, Clooney's so cool. Like he'll never get latched on. Look, he's dating Stacy Keebler. She's super pretty. He's never gonna marry that girl. He's going to be a bachelor for life. And then I'm like, what woman could land Clooney? Oh, a woman that speaks like 7 languages and is an attorney for the United Nations on human rights and peace. I'm like, oh, Clooney married up.
Yeah. Yeah. Find the partner that makes you look real goofy. Yeah. And then steer into the goofy if it makes them laugh.
Yeah.
That's all the advice. So
the great thing though was Doug is driving kind of some of the last of the stuff they're bringing to the Bay Area with his truck and trailer attached to it. And so I flew down to San Diego. We went to Temecula where the house was that we rented. We played games all weekend. And then I drove back up with Doug, which was great because we got like 7 hours to just sit there and chat and share stories and talk about stuff. And so I did all that. And then this weekend, my wife is like, you're going to do all this travel. That's okay. But I get this weekend. I'm like, it's yours.
Yeah.
So I got to take her up to Napa this weekend, which will be nice. So,
oh, you have to go to Napa.
Well, I'm not a big wine drinker, right? So I said, but what I did was, and guys, I'm telling you, this is what you do. If you want to earn like bandwidth, right? Hobby bandwidth.
Well said.
We're going up to Napa. It's not necessarily like, I get to spend the time with my wife, which I very much want to spend time with, but I'm not like a big wine drinker, but she is. So I went ahead and like, I've already planned, like, we're going to go to this restaurant. We're going to go to this restaurant. I got reservations where I can. Then we're going to go to this winery, this winery, this winery. I'll drive you from winery to winery. You drink whatever you want. I'll try some wine. I'm not a huge wine drinker, but it's everything that she wants to do. I'll do it. It'll be fun.
Yeah, you spend the day hanging out with somebody that curls your toes and you like their company.
That's right.
So there you go.
That's right. But it's all for her.
There you go.
Right. Sure. It's really for me. But it's all for her. So it'll be a good weekend. But after this weekend, other than 2 days, I got to go back to Utah in October. Everything else is free. Right, it's all free.
And you're booked on the 12th. Don't forget you're booked on the 12th.
I'm booked on the 12th for gaming.
For sports ball.
That's right. So,
and then we got to schedule Inquisitor.
Yeah, and we got to schedule Inquisitor. So we'll make it all happen.
You got to let me know because I need to create some bandwidth myself right now.
I know. I'm working on it. But it's been an incredible period of time. My wife and I are now dealing with having a child in the house for us, and it's a big house, and we're like, oh, it's really empty and quiet, and unfortunately the way it worked out was we dropped our kid off and then I immediately left my wife alone, which is really a tough call, but she's a sport about it. So
the first time I went to Gen Con, we had literally just moved into that big place we used to live in.
Yeah.
And then I left for an entire week to go work at Gen Con.
Yeah.
And literally it was a house full of boxes. And then Larry was gone with my parents.
Oh, no.
So, and then the cat vomited tuna fish all over the brand new bedroom.
Oh, gross.
So the story, if you ever get the chance, my wife loves to tell that story.
So this is kind of the episode of Life Happens.
Yeah.
You make the best of it. I did get to play a lot of games that were not 40K related, as I mentioned, Conan, which is a just brilliant game. I'm super in love with it. Ed had, we had, when the Kickstarter started, Jeff and myself and a couple others, Alan and Ed, all bought in for Ed at the king level of the Conan thing. So he got everything. And like, I started pricing out like, oh, I want to get everything. I'm like, oh my God, people have really marked this stuff up because it's not available. So I'm waiting for the Kickstarter to come back. I'm going to buy the hell out of that stuff. It's super good. I also played a game, again, not 40K related, but I played a game while I was down at the Geek in South, which is called Dice Throne that Doug has bought everything for.
Yep.
That game is awesome.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
Super awesome. Fun.
That's another one. If you want everything, get the card. That's not a cheap.
That's not super cheap, but you can get the base set for like $45 if you buy it right from them. And it's got like 6 or 8 characters in it. Super fun, press your luck kind of dice game, kind of card game / dice game. Super fun. Yeah. Super fun.
What'd you think of We Need to Talk?
So We Need to Talk is developed by, at least in part, by Michael Dunsmore, who is a member of our game.
And Jordan Nichols.
Was Jordan part of that too? Okay.
Yep.
So We Need to Talk is interesting. It is based around the premise of you doing an intervention on one of your friends, and they don't know what the problem is.
Right.
And you go through 3 rounds of different clues that you're giving them. Like, for example, the first round is you're giving them a clue, but you don't want... There's this weird mechanic where you don't want them to guess it on your clue, but you want them to guess it on other people's clue.
You want to give a good enough clue that they won't guess it for you, but the next person, they'll guess it on them.
Right. So you like, for example, I think mine was about the one that I was the one on the hot seat was I was joining all these fad diets or something.
Oh, okay.
Like that, right.
Sure.
And so like the first one was, we need to talk about the food in the pantry. Right. And I'm like, okay. And then, so that guy gets a couple of points and you go to the next one. We need to talk about your obsessive reading of labels or something. Right. Like
that's funny. In our group, we've played that exact card.
So. Yeah. And so it goes around and then I don't remember what the second round is. The game was fun.
Yeah.
Like, once we figured it out and we were like, okay, we got it. It's hard to be that guy in the middle.
Yeah.
Like it is hard to be that one in the middle, trying to guess what the thing is fast enough that you retain a bunch of points,
right,
while not giving away all the points. But it was fun. It's a cute game.
Yeah.
And it's all silly.
For those of you who are going like, hey, 40K podcast, it comes with blank cards and there was already a lot of discussion. And I will say the discussion was initiated by my wife that there needs to be gaming problem cards added.
Oh, that's very true.
And she was like, we're taking some of the blanks. We're writing in some, you have a problem with gaming.
Yeah. You think?
Ones. Also, on the rare event that the person's card that they don't know what's wrong with them is something they actually kind of do. One was that my beautiful, loving, supportive wife got was your uncontrollable swearing while driving, which may or may not have been a little too on the nose. And all the people who had to make her guess looked at each other and were like, oh, okay.
Maybe we picked a different card.
Another card. And she got
it. It was a cute game. We had a lot of fun with it. We played, 4 or 5 rounds of it. It was pretty cool.
It's a good party game.
Played a little the Cthulhu Pandemic version, which I really enjoy.
I love it.
And then I ran a Call of Cthulhu role-playing session, which I will tell you, Doug and Travis are some of the best role players when you get them going. Like they were hysterical. Like they were killing the rest of us. I have video of it. I'll show you.
I can't wait to see.
It's pretty fun. So it was a great weekend of gaming, followed by a drive up where we talked about all the gaming we're going to do when Doug gets back up here and he's working on his Mantis Warriors. Aren't Mantis Warriors?
Nova.
No, he's not Nova Marines.
Medusa.
Sons of Medusa. Yeah. Sons of Medusa. Mantis.
Lime Bros.
They're lime. Freaking painted amazingly well. And we also discussed his proclivity for being too hard on himself in his painting factor. So there was a lot of good natured ribbing going on about all that stuff.
That's why we love him.
It was a great trip, but I'm so happy to be home. I'm so done with travel. Like people who are like, oh, I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous you travel for work all the time. It is not glamorous most of the time. So this was the other point. This is a good story. I was supposed to go so I went to Belfast. I have a real hard time adjusting to the time difference, like just a miserable time working on some other, like I'm literally thinking about getting sleeping pills for it because like going to my doctor and saying, I'm having a hard time sleeping. I need something. I go out to Belfast. I'm really tired. I'm working Aaron and I Aaron Dimsky-Bowden, are supposed to meet for dinner on Thursday night. I'm going to drive out to his house. I'm going to, hang out with his wife and him, and we're going to have dinner, and then I'm going to drive home. Well, I haven't rented a car yet. So I was going to go rent a car because where I'm staying, I'm within walking distance of the office. So I online, reserve a car for me at the airport. I have the manager that works for me drive me over to the airport to go pick up the car. Hey, do you want to follow me back? I'm like, no, it's okay. I'll use Google Maps. I'll get to the office. I also generally know where it is. Not that big of a deal. But I am a little nervous because I'm driving on the wrong side of the road for me. Here we drive on the right side of the road, there they drive on the left. And going through intersections is very different there because of that.
Sure. So
I'm a little nervous about that. Not to mention the fact that I rent an automatic. Most cars you rent there are manual transmission, which I can drive. But again, the stick is on the opposite side.
Yeah, it's one more thing.
Yeah, it's just one more thing. Yeah, the driver's side is on the opposite side. It's just one more thing I have to concentrate on. I'm like, no, let me just get an automatic. I'll pay the extra for the automatic. That's great. We can give you a stick right now, but the automatic's about 20 minutes out. I'll wait. It's cool. So I'm waiting. Hey, it's here. You can go out and get it. So I walk out to the area where I'm going to pick up the car, and I go to the shed. And he's like, okay, I need your license, blah, blah. Here's my license. And he goes, sir, your license is expired. I go, what? And I look at it. My birthday's in March. My license has been expired for 6 months.
How did you fly?
My passport.
Oh, okay, sure. Right, of course.
And I use Clear at the airports. So I scan in with my fingers. So I've been flying, and here's the kicker. I've rented 2 cars in Utah.
Wow.
On an expired driver's license. And the stupidest thing, I just never got the notice. So I think it went to the old house. And so, I was like, I can't get a car. They're like, well, we can't give you a car. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. I go,
you think?
I go, okay, well, so then I have to message Aaron, and I'm like, dude, I can't get out there because he's 90 minutes outside of Belfast. And this was my other concern. I'm really tired. It's this windy country road all the way out to his place on the wrong side of the road. I'm like, I'm going to go out there. We're going to hang out. I'm going to drive back. I'm going to be tired. Boy, this is a recipe for disaster. So in some ways I was like, maybe it's better that I don't drive out there, Aaron. But I really wanted to see him. We haven't seen each other in a while. And then he was like, well, you know what? I'm kind of sick anyway. I would have been terrible company. And I'm like, okay, this is better for both of us. But he was so committed to having me come out there because every time I'm supposed to meet him, something happens.
You have an expired license.
This time it was my fault. For the first time ever. Well, it wasn't really his fault last time. But anyway. So he's like, well, you're going to come back. I'm coming back hopefully in summer with Shell. He's like, great. Come out then. The families will get together. We'll do something. I'm like, okay, we're going to try this again.
Good luck.
Some things are just not meant to be.
There it is.
So, yeah.
Glad you're back, buddy.
The craziest thing was, I went back to my hotel, logged on to the California DMV website, paid $35, got home, my license was here. It's like it wasn't that I didn't want
a license. What? You weren't intentionally driving on an expired license?
Yeah.
That's weird that you wouldn't do that on purpose.
It's a good thing I didn't get pulled over. I drive pretty fast in that Porsche too.
I've been with you.
That's right. All right. Should we kick off the actual show?
Maybe we should have a show.
I know we're rambling a bit. I'm sorry. Jesus Christ. It's almost 40 minutes in this segment. Okay.
I was wondering.
Hey, you know what? We hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Let's launch with a little bit of hobby progress after this break. We'll be right back.
Enjoy our new format.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Hey, this is Big Nasty B from Life After the Cover Safe, and I'm at a mall talking to strangers about Table War. Table War develops some of the most innovative products for the miniature wargaming and hobby industry.
And I develop pictures.
That's great. They develop things like the Fat Mat.
Who's Matt, and why is he so fat?
Well, first off, Matt is not a person. The Fat Mat is a tabletop gaming surface, and with over 40 different designs, Table War's Fat Mat has become a community standard.
I got a Surface Pro. It's like 10 inches. By the way, I'm meeting my friend Simbon. Did you know what that is?
No, but I do want to tell you about the Table War Tower case line.
Oh man, towers are so huge.
Well, it's not that kind of tower. It's the original modular, all-in-one display, storage, and transport system for all your tabletop miniatures.
Wow, you're really smart. What's your relationship status?
Well, it's complicated, but you know what isn't complicated?
Chili dogs.
This is true. but also the Macromat.
Oh, geez, not that guy again.
The Macromat is a one-of-a-kind, innovative photography backdrop, perfect for collectibles, hobby miniatures, and small works of art. Its durability, portability, and functionality in one inexpensive product.
I wasn't paying attention to what you just said, but do you validate parking?
No, I do not. But if you want more information, head over to tablewar.com and check them out.
Table War!
Yeah, you are.
Back in the saddle.
I know. All right. Well, we're recording, so there you go. So we're going to kick it off with a little bit of hobby progress. For me, I'm going to go first because mine is pretty limited.
Mine is too.
As I discussed in the intro, I've been traveling a whole lot, so that has definitely had an impact. Like the entire month has essentially been me going on one trip after another. So I did spend some time, as you know, Colin has launched a Patreon as well. And so I joined his live stream at one point. I think it was me and like one other person.
Perfect.
And Colin had started a little bit late that day and he didn't have any particular thing. And he was like, well, I'll work on this. And I said, no, work on like how to paint black. And he's like, oh, okay. Because I think I was like maybe the only person in there at that time. So he was kind of going through showing me how he did black. I need something I can do quickly. I went and bought the colors that he suggested. I'm going to, my intention now for, upcoming commitments is I'm going to base coat this whole army, basically using, at least a major portion of it as soon as I get some time to actually sit down and airbrush, which won't be this weekend, but will be the week during the week after. So
nice.
Let's see. So I mentioned travel, a lot of travel. I did also replace a small mid-sized tower tableware case. So I had switched from I had one that had like 3 drawers in it, and I was using it for all my paints and supplies and that kind of thing. Then we started playing Adeptus Titanicus. And I was like, oh, this is a perfect size case to carry my Adeptus Titanicus stuff in. And then I over-magnetized my Titans, and so I couldn't get them off the board. I have to actually put like a strip of cloth under them, like a ribbon.
Yeah.
And so I pull them up. But it is a perfect size case for that, for me, to get around quickly. And but then I found, I'll just take all these paints. I'll just put them in these boxes. In fact, I'll put them in the what do you call it? The filament boxes that come for the 3D filament print, because they're kind of a nice size box.
Yep. It's a bonus of buying filament, it seems.
Yeah. But then I was quickly like, this sucks. Like, they're not organized well. And so I reached out to Tableware. I was like, look, I want to buy another case. What do you got? And they had, a few in stock. I said, okay, I'll take this red one. And I put all the drawers in. I went through and organized all my paints, of which I was like, oh, why do I have 5 of this color? And, so I narrowed those down, put those all in boxes, got rid of all the dried ones. Now I have a fairly organized painting system that I still am not using, but I do need to start painting.
But you're gonna.
I swear to God I'm going to. I knew, and one of the reasons the show is so late is I knew this month was going to be rough. And as you said when you came in, maybe we should just, at a certain point, if we know we're going to be like this, just say, you know what, we're going to take a month and we're going to take a break for the month, because I probably would have done that. We are going to get caught up now. So I have a fairly ambitious recording schedule coming up, along with like the Patreon recording and that kind of stuff. So, maybe I should just go that route. But so I haven't done a whole lot of hobby stuff. I've mostly been traveling and that kind of thing. And I'll talk a little bit about that. I did go to Warhammer World again,
Okay. Cool for you.
Yeah. And then we'll talk games played at that point. So, you know what? I did. I'll always fall back to the old staple. I did buy some things while I was at Warhammer World.
Shocking.
I bought, so the first, last time I went, I bought this Warhammer World dioramas book.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, which is awesome. This copy's for you because I accidentally bought that again.
Well, I'll take it. Thank you.
But now they have a Warhammer World Dioramas 2 book out, which is what threw me. So I bought both of them again. I bought, there's like a new Alpha Legion book out by I can't remember, like Sons of the Hydra, I think is what the name of the book is. I bought that. And then I bought a 3-pack of the Easy Fit Reavers. the Space Marine Primaris Reavers.
Right.
And the reason I bought those is because of the Kill Team game I played against Jeff. And those are not too bad in Kill Team.
No.
So, the interesting thing that happened was when you go to Warhammer World and you buy something like that, and I traveled super light. I literally traveled with my backpack and a small roller carry-on bag for Europe. I was just like, I'm not going to drag a big bag around, whatever. I didn't have a lot of room to bring anything home. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to ship all this stuff I bought home. Well, I bought one set at one store at Warhammer World, and then I bought a couple things at another store, and then I was like, okay, let me take these and get these shipped. And they take me over to the Forge World counter to say, okay, here, let's bring you up here and ship the stuff out. Great. Here I have 2 purchases. Can both these go? Sure, no problem. Well, when they arrived, it was just the 2 diorama books, and I was missing like the other things, and it was literally at the point where I couldn't remember what I bought. I was like, what did I buy? I know I bought that book, and I couldn't find my receipt, and I was saying, okay, I know I bought that Hydra, the Sons of the Hydra book, and then finally I was like, oh, right, I bought those Primaris push fit models. Not a big purchase. I didn't spend a ton of money there. So I write GW support and I say, hey, I bought this. These are the 4 things I bought. Only these 2 arrived. These other things are here. And they of course write back, go, well, do you have a receipt? And I said, no, but I do have, here's like my charge card statement where you can see the amount I charged. I said, this £8 charge is me going to the museum. And then I don't, these are the other 2 things that should be in here, but it doesn't break them out. And then I pulled the most. I'm ashamed of myself. I almost feel dirty. I was like, however, if you review my purchase history under this address and Carl at theindependentcharacters.com, you will see that I make quite a few purchases there. If I were going to try to be pulling one over on you, it certainly wouldn't be for a box of 3 push fit Reavers and a black library book.
Yeah.
Okay, we're sending your stuff over.
Maybe they were just disappointed that that's all you got this time. They were just depressed. Like, that's
that
it?
Could be it. I did look around the Forge. Like, I get into those situations where I'm like, what can I spend money on? And I'm like, I really don't need to spend any money here right now. I do like the diorama books.
Oh yeah, those are awesome.
And so they have shipped that stuff off to me, which should be arriving soon. But I feel kind of dirty about the way I went around it. I probably should have just first tried. No, I don't have it. Here's this. But I didn't want to go back and forth with them a bunch of times. Don't you know who I am? Yeah, I felt like such an ass.
Way to get out ahead of me throwing you that line.
Yeah, it was pretty horrible. But it was a pretty good trip. It's always a good trip to Warhammer World. And that's me hobby progress-wise. Not a whole lot.
Okay, I don't want to let you off the hook that easy, though, so tell us more about you've been in agony.
Yeah.
Angst is a real word when it comes to this black paint. So what did you settle with? Tell us about it.
I don't know. They're sitting right over there. I can't
The paint's over there,
paints.
everybody. They're right across the room.
I'll tell you what. I don't remember the exact colors of the paint. One's like black gray or something like that. They are. What the heck is the stupid? Just grab them right over there, Jody. I will say the golds that he convinced me to get were scale 75 golds. And as I watched him put the scale 75 over the black, I was like, did that just cover in one go? And he said, yes, it certainly did.
Yeah, I just finished a project using some scale color metallics, and they're pretty amazing.
Watching Colin paint with them, I was like, oh, I'm ordering those. And then I was like, what number is that? And,
well, thank God they have
so
numbers.
what I ended up getting was the Vallejo. That was the word that was giving me. Thank you for grabbing these. The Vallejo black gray.
Okay.
And then over that, the somber gray, the game Vallejo game color. So the first one's model color. This one's game color. So I'll have to thin them to run through an airbrush.
Yeah.
And this one is the somber gray or sombra gray. And I think I'm just going to go with these 2. I think I've given up on the whole, like, add some blues in there and this kind of thing. At this point, I just want to get the army nice looking and out there.
Yeah, you only have about a month before Sisters drop, my man. You got to hurry up.
Okay, so that's not going to happen. I will drop this, though, talking with people and such there. The Sisters box that's coming out, like that looks awesome. I'm of course going to buy it, but one person in particular told me, wait till the back half of the Sisters release.
Oh my goodness.
You won't be disappointed.
Yeah,
like that's just the front half.
Yeah.
And I saw those at Nova. Like I saw those models at Nova painted, and they are beautiful. Oh, that's the other thing I got. I got that that Sister of Battle at Nova that they had under the chair. So if you haven't heard at Nova Open during the GW kind of announcement of things, the final thing they did was basically said
they Oprah'd everybody.
Yeah, feel under your chair, and you had a taped Sister of Battle in a box there. So I grabbed an extra one for a Dawn too. So because there was an empty chair next to me. So I know you're giving me that look. Why not me? Okay, here's.
No, that's fair.
I should give it to you.
No, you really should.
Dawn doesn't want the new ones.
See, and I can't even say that I do. Although with some of the new releases, Dawn and I actually were talking online that I was strangely excited that I was like, oh, there's things I can buy. And then there was one of those moments of like, wait.
But I'm not going to buy those.
No, the Rhino thing was a big save for me because my sister's army is really relatively small.
Yeah.
So I only actually have Rhinos. I've never gotten around to putting immolators
Right.
But with the new kit, because it's off the same old Rhino chassis, just new upgrades, it'll work great where I can continue just building out Rhinos with the few kits I have left of the old stuff and then use the new kit to do immolators. So they'll even look more distinct between the two. There's a handful of
just
new
wait
things.
for that back end.
Yeah, for the first time ever, I talked myself into I am going to buy I've never bought a deluxe edition of a codex for any army ever.
You think you're going to go that route?
I am. This time I will. It's been long enough. It's been a long time since they got that attention.
And then 6 months later, they're going to release a new one.
That's fine. That's the thing is I realized I was like, I don't care because in a weird way, it's been so long. In a weird way, this marks the end of that project for me.
Yeah.
And being that there's kind of an emotional connection to that project, having a finite, like this is the end of that timeline.
Yeah.
It kind of, and I don't know, there's maybe more to it there, but I was like, no, this is, I mean, hey, Sisters players been waiting for a long time.
For sure.
I mean, realistically, since like 3rd edition, before you really had just a Sister of Battle book, everything else has been a blend. So I'm pretty jazzed about that one.
So I did also record an interview while I was at Nova with Dave Taylor and Jeff about Inquisitor, and then promptly realized that when I recorded it on Dan's Roadcaster, I think he had different firmware than I did or something. Because when I put it in mine, it does not exist as a file.
No.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to redo that interview because Dave had some really great points about Inquisitor, but I'll try to redo that interview, over Skype or something along those lines. But it was fun to talk to Jeff for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So anyway, I've got my colors set. I'm going to just start going to town and just get this thing done. I've also been looking at how Dave Paints does his, which is very similar to how I think Colin does his black, which is just some grays on the black and stuff to give definition and stuff. So
awesome.
Anyway, I may have scaled it back just slightly. Than where I was going to go, but I got to get moving on this thing. I'm just tired of talking about it.
Yeah. I agree.
Yep. I know you're probably tired of listening.
I was like, dang it, that's going to come out.
It's so stupid. No, I agree.
No, that dancing around, committing
color
to a
is
color
the hardest thing.
Well, because there's an unlimited number of options.
And then once you pick it, that's what you're doing.
Amen.
Right? And so for me, like color is absolutely the hardest thing to do. And I don't have the eye for color that this is, I think, why sometimes I fall back to things like I'm going to do ultramarines because it's like, well, these are the colors you use,
Should I use ultramarine blue?
Or ultramarine blue?
Yeah.
What'll I do to do edge highlighting? I know. I'll mix some white with that ultramarine blue.
There you go. Yeah, there's something to be said for that, for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, that was me. You.
See, it's been a minute since I chatted about.
Yeah, we haven't seen each other in over a month.
Yeah, it's been quite a bit. So it's been very scattered. Actually, I took a little bit of not a hobby break.
You had a busy summer of hobbying.
I did do a lot this summer and a lot of gaming, and I am back to a real responsible, functional, tax-paying human being again. I am gainfully employed as a teacher yet again. So my summer of no pay is over. So I'm back to it. And so we talked, actually, I think the last time I was on, we talked about that notion we talked about Colin's phrasing from the Kevin Costner movie about clear the mechanism and resetting. I did some of that for myself, of just emptied off the table desk, organized the paints. So I too did a paint organization. Just really put everything away and kind of took stock of where I was at. Engaged in a lot of non-40K painting from that. Painted up a number of Blitz Bowl teams. Funny enough, talking about black, I actually just finished a dwarf team. And it's funny where inspiration comes from. I had a set of Kickstarter dice that came with a team that I'd actually sold off. I didn't even own the dwarf team from this alternate European company. But they came with these cool kind of platinum and orange swirly dwarf logo dice, and I was like, oh, and I didn't know what color to do dwarves, but I knew we've been doing a lot of play testing for adding the non-existing teams, and that ended up being the inspiration. I was like, oh, paint them to match these cool dice, and then I've got custom dice to match a team. But the reason I'm yammering on about Blitzball, other than it's amazing, is
it is super fun.
It is super. It's so good. Is I was painting black, and I was realizing how much anymore I really, really enjoy painting black. And I remember
we could work out a deal.
No.
I swear to God, I'm going to do this myself.
Yeah, I would say no to that just on that principle.
On principle alone,
but I was remembering actually something Jeff had asked me a really long time ago about on an episode when he was doing this.
That was a long time.
He asked me about painting white. Like, what do you do to paint white? And my answer is the same answer I always give is I don't. And it was like, and it's not that I don't paint things with white on them, but when you go to paint something white, don't use white.
Right.
Use light grays. Use light tans.
Highlight with white.
Highlight end with a tiny bit of white.
See, that's the crazy thing. Like, actually, I can paint white.
Right.
Which is typically considered a hard paint.
Right.
The black is murder.
Well, because your white gives you the maximum bandwidth from black to white.
Yeah.
But with black, you very quickly end up in gray and you're no longer in black. So that window to work in is very, very tight. But some companies make some really fantastic blues and greens and that are these they look black at a glance until you put them next to black and then you go, that's definitely, and there's something about that I find really enjoyable, that really kind of subtle difference between a warm or a cool or this or that. So that's partially why I was like, wait, no, where did you settle? Because
right. This is where I've settled. I'm just going to go for it.
Really enjoying that. Now I did do some 40K painting. I finished out my squad of 3 old school penitent engines for my sisters. Thanks, Loopy. And I did a little fun freehand. It says in Lupus Victus down on the banner on the one he gave me. That was fun to do. I painted up a squad of Stormbolter Dominions. Something I'd wanted to add. I added in a Dialogus, which is she looks like Velma with a loudspeaker.
Yeah. I saw that picture.
Yeah, so that was fun. She's a kind of hideous model, like just not a very...
The detail's not there on the face and stuff.
It's not, and she's not in armor, which
I've
is
heard
weird.
some criticism of the faces and hairstyles of the new models, and I got to tell you, I don't buy it. Like, I think they're amazing.
I don't. And to be fair, like, people can judge.
Look, it's all opinion.
Yes,
right.
Definitely.
My opinion is they look fantastic, but
what I was gonna say is I thought the old ones weren't as bad as people go on and on to be.
They're a little dated now.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
The entire range is. I mean, it's also, I'll be honest. When I look at the old sister models, for the technology of their time that was available to cast, they are unbelievable figures.
There's a lot of detail on them, like no doubt about
detailed. And some of the depth of, just something simple of if you're spin casting metal, almost every sister, there's a very clear indent under her chin and on the side of her neck. They have a big heavy metal collar that comes up around under their hairline. And the gap that is under their chin line or their jawline back between the armor plate and their neck, it's a really deep gap.
Like it could quite easily just be filled.
Right. And that's had to have been hard on those molds and like all of those variables that come in when you start casting things. man, they are consistently just really, I think they're really nice models, but the new ones, the Repentia, oh my goodness,
good.
stop it.
I can't wait.
So good. Yeah, I'm very
I
excited.
can wait, actually.
Yeah. Hey, you and me both.
Buy something else that's going to sit on my shelf for a while.
You can do it, Carl. We're all cheering.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I need it.
Been doing some board game painting too.
Okay.
And then, yeah, that's been the bulk of my hobby, but it was nice it was kind of prophetic, that we talked about that idea of like clearing things off and then revisiting and then like, okay, giving yourself that space. And because I knew I was going back to, the reality is the first month back as a teacher is one of the craziest times of the year. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's weird because for me, the usual rotation is my life is hectic. Every time I assign an essay, I'm buried under grading and reading. And I don't have any of that at the beginning, but it's, a million meetings and, making sure lesson plans are dialed. Our school is going through a massive renovation right now. So I'm not in a portable, I'm in some old office buildings at the back end of the school.
Gotcha.
And
So it's just hectic.
It's crazy. Yeah. There's no speakers and it's a weird time. The view's real nice though. So I got that. But yeah, so I knew that was coming. Yeah. So, in a weird way, just as like, so what I always try and think in terms of hobby progress, what can I go, hey, here's something to think about, was I knew my real life limitations were going to limit the pace of hobby I'd been doing for the prior few months, obviously.
Yeah.
But even that time of year for me is going to be even more limited. So taking that time to plan for that and kind of empty things down and close it down, as it were, and make sure I was accessible to very small projects I was excited to do. I was painting one-off monsters for a board game because I could sit down and in 2 hours I could have one totally done. Yeah. But that was satisfying meditation time. Be forgiving of yourself with that real life.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because like I said, this month has just been this one of pure travel and business and work and then some fun travel, but not 40K related. And then it's minor 40K related travel. And then Nova. Yeah. And the reality is, like, I recognize I was not going to get much accomplished. And especially when I have the show kind of looming in the hobby progress section where I'm sick of repeating that I'm struggling with this black. I'm just going to move forward with it. And so to me, I had to finally just go, well, it is what it is. And, stop putting all that pressure on yourself and just go with the flow and enjoy it. So I will talk in the games played stuff about some games that I played that were not 40K related, simply because so much of my time this month was occupied with a variety of things, but I did get a lot of 40K in. So actually, unless you have something you wanted to mention in like the hobby goals and promises thing, I think we kind of touched on those.
I have one.
Yeah, fire away.
So I am committed, and it's happening because it has to be done by Sunday. So it's a safe commitment because I got to have it done. Yeah. I've had a creature caster. I've mentioned a few times, creature caster, one of their pleasure demons. That's not what this one's called. It's the bull one. It's been half painted, and then beauty of airbrush, without stripping it. I just said, I don't like it. And I completely repainted it. Yeah. And it's been at that state for a while. It's going to get done by this weekend. So you can,
what are you doing Sunday that you need it?
Brian they're running a campaign through Splintermind, and he asked me, I think he wants to, I don't want to spoil anything.
Okay,
so
don't spoil
I am playing a game
You're playing a game Sunday
with Brian.
That you need it.
And being Eldari, I'm going to bust out my Slanesh demons, which I actually haven't done in this edition yet. And I was like, man, I need that cool centerpiece. So, and because it's far along. So yeah, I'll throw pictures up to the group whenever this drops. You should have seen, or will shortly see.
This will drop tomorrow.
Super. And
it'll be out before
so
then.
by this weekend, you should see those pictures, barring real lifing me.
Cool.
Right. So games and whatnot.
Okay. So I went to Nova Open. The first time I've ever gone to Nova Open, which is out near Washington, D.C. Like literally you land in the airport there and
off you go.
5-10 minutes from the airport. Super close. Had not been before. Mike Brandt had invited me to come out several times. So I finally said, okay, I'm going to do it. I thought I was going to spend a lot of time with Dan and Campbell, but as it turned out, Campbell couldn't make it. Unfortunately, he had a death in the family, and so he couldn't make it. And Dan was super wrapped up in the narrative event, which I signed up for what was called the Day Fighter event. So I would play narrative games during the day and then have the evening off. So the first day, so I arrive, we hang out. I hang out with Doug and Todd. I think Jeff arrived the next day, but I ended up going to the first day of the Day Fighter event, and I played against, I want to say Joshua, a 1,000-point game against his Gene Stealer cult. This did not go well for me.
Uh-oh.
Like he had destroyed his previous opponent in the first turn, and we were playing a mission that was effectively, and I have the missions from the Nova event because the missions they came up with were actually really, really fun.
Cool.
And I'll talk about one of those in a minute. But in this particular one, you had one character that I can't remember all the details, but the character, you had to keep that character alive. The sniper for the Gene Stealer cult is really, really good.
Oh.
And through
Earmuffs, Matt. Earmuffs.
Through stupidity on my own part,
Oh, no.
I did not hide my guy because I didn't realize he'd be able to pick him out. Like I thought, surely he can't be as good as the assassin sniper. Guess what?
And don't call me Shirley.
I lost pretty much in my deployment phase.
Yeah.
So then we were like, well, listen, let's pick a different guy to be the guy. And we played it out a couple more turns, but it still wasn't good for me. But so I appreciated him, hey, let's change it up a little bit because I just did not recognize the danger I had put myself in.
Right.
And we laughed about it.
Sure.
I mean, he was, fun opponent, but man, that was a lesson. So watch out for that sniper.
Duly noted.
Definitely. Okay. Then I played, and that was I think that was the evening before. I was just looking for a game, and they had kind of wrapped up their thing, and I was like, well, I'll play you a game. And literally the game took less time than me unpacking my demons and Thousand Suns from my phone. I'm not even joking. Like that's
Round
not
two.
even an exaggeration. So the next day I'm actually in the Day Fighter event, and my first game is against Admech, and that was a lot of plasma.
Oh, my goodness.
He packed a lot of plasma into that 1,000-point game. Now, bear in mind, this is a narrative event. I brought a list, especially at 2,000 points, that was a pretty much mix of Thousand Suns and Demons of Zinch. Like, it's super fluffy list. At the level we were playing, I think I want to say I was playing all Thousand Suns at that point, but enough plasma will hurt anything.
Yeah.
And so the mission in this case, during the whole event, you have civilians that are running around. They're just marked by like a little token or whatever.
Okay.
And they're all 3D printed tokens. And so you could gain infamy, or you could gain, like, I want to say fame, but it's not fame, the protector status if you kept these alive. Well, I quickly realized, well, I'm not going to win this game, so I'm just going to start slaughtering all the civilians.
If you can't be good, be angry.
That's right.
So says Corn.
So I just start gunning down all these civilians and slaughtering them in close combat and all this stuff.
Well
I was
done.
like, I'm going to go out with, so I think that's an interesting point though, because I changed my objective. I was like, okay, this is not going well. How can I make this fun for me? I know I'm going to gain as much infamy as I possibly can. So I just, mopped up most of the
How were you at
civilians.
killing harmless, defenseless?
Pretty good.
Nice.
Turns out pretty good.
All right.
Yeah.
Way to go, Thousand Suns.
Next up, I played a 2,000-point game. So first you play a 1,000-point game, then after lunch, play a 2,000-point game. It's interesting how they do it. Like you had two sides, Virtue and I can't remember the other side, but you had these two sides that all the players were broken up into. And this had been an ongoing narrative. If you've listened to Dan and Campbell, you've heard this all before, but it was an ongoing narrative for several years at Nova.
Right.
And this was kind of the finale of the thing to determine who won, Virtue, or I cannot for the life of me remember the other side. And I heard Dan kind of talk about it and felt like this was not as narrative as like previous years. Like he felt like the story was kind of missing. And I'm like, what a bummer, because I had heard so much about this event, and that was kind of what I went out there for. And it was just kind of like, I'm just playing games and there's a few extra layers of rules added on, but I appreciated that they were getting to the end of something.
Yeah.
So what they do is they break you up into, on your side, say I was on Virtue, they break you up into kind of pods. So like I had a war leader, and there were 5 of us in total.
Okay.
He and 4 other players. We would then face off against another pod of people and say, okay, one group would issue the challenge, and then we would answer it with okay, who wants to fight against this? And so you would kind of try to balance out like, there's like a sub game there, almost like they do at ETC with a captain, and then right. So it was very much like that.
Cool,
which I really kind of dug.
Yeah.
So we get up, and the first guy's like, okay, we're gonna issue a challenge. Okay, we're gonna so and so's gonna play. What's he playing? He's playing Custodes. And then our war leader's like, who wants to fight against Custodes? Everybody's like,
yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I'll play against Custodes. I've already got my teeth kicked in by AdMech. Might as well beat Custodes. So I start playing Tim in the Custodes game, and boy, I did okay.
All right.
Yeah, I pulled out a win there.
Hey.
In my list, I had, like I said, 1,000 points of it is Thousand Suns, and then 1,000 points of it is effectively Tzeentch Demons. And I try to build as much command points in there as I can with those 2 lists. But I also want a fun, cooling list. I never get to use my Lord of Change, so I brought a Lord of Change. Pretty much won me the game.
Nice.
He just has so many wounds, and it was just... He had 2 of those the Custodes big heavy dreads, the Telemechon.
Oh, okay.
The Telemechon. I can't remember the exact. You know what I'm.
The big back rocket fella.
Yeah. But they stayed in the back the whole time, and I just put intervening terrain in between me and them. There was a huge piece of terrain in the middle, and I was like, well, if you're going to shoot me with those, you're going to have to come way over here. And he never moved them forward. If he had been aggressive with those, I guarantee you I would have lost. Right. But as it turned out, not too bad. Not too bad. Yeah. I used the tactic I learned from you in our kill team game, which was I took pink horrors that split into blue horrors.
Yeah, works.
And I paid for the blue horrors because getting those off of an objective was a disaster for him.
Yeah, it's sad face for they're not going to kill a whole bunch, but they're a pain in the butt.
Yeah, they're not going to kill much, but they will hold an objective like nobody's business. So the mission was really cool though, because this is the one mission I really, really enjoyed. Not because I won, but it was a well fought mission. I got to the end of it. I won, and I won because I focused on the objectives.
Hey,
he focused on the killing and lost track of it. And I recognized what was going on. And I was like, I'm just going to go over here to this objective. Oh, you're going to shoot that guy off? Too late. I already grabbed the objective. So this is what it was. You had 6 objectives on the table, and these were all fuel barrels.
Okay.
Right. And to capture the fuel from the barrel, you had to control it for a round. So if you control it for a round, you drain some of the fuel from it. And there were 3 levels of fuel in it.
Okay.
And so once you captured all 3 points from that, it was no longer an objective.
Okay.
And it was pretty badass.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it was super cool. So you would need to stay there. You could get points for staying there, but only so many.
Sure.
And it worked really well.
Was there a limitation on what kind of units could do that?
Any scoring unit.
Okay.
Any scoring unit could. So if you were there with an elite and nobody else was around you, you got it. But if there's a troop there, they're pulling the fuel.
Yeah, really, that's a great idea.
It was. I'm telling you, the mission design, and I kept the little booklet that had all the missions in it that they had written for this thing, were pretty fun. They were pretty fun.
Right
like
on.
I will play those again without a doubt.
Awesome. Well, you and I have a lingering narrative game we got to get back to.
That's true.
I'm very excited to do this.
So I had a lot of fun in that game. Tim was a great opponent. We had some great fights, like Captain versus my HQ and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
man, if Lord of Change a Lord of Change gets to run around for a while, that +2 to cast and they're no. I mean, it's still a greater demon. No slouch in close combat.
Yeah.
They're pretty good.
So I had a lot of fun in that game. Like I said, Tim was a great opponent. So then, they have this lounge upstairs at Nova Open, which you've probably heard about elsewhere as well. And all the alcohol you buy up there goes alcohol is brought in. They mix drinks and stuff for you. You pay for the alcohol. All that money goes towards the charity.
Oh, cool.
They play live music up there, like Mike Brandt himself and his. By the way, I hate that guy because is there anything Mike can't do?
Right. I
Freaking hell.
having met him all of once, I'm like, yeah, he reminds me of my middle brother. And
He's in a band. He has a good voice. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
he's charming. He's easy to get along with. He's
no
a
wonder his
good-looking
wife's
guy.
so pretty. Okay, so yeah, he's very, very nice. He's almost so genuine. You're like, all right, what's really going on behind you? But he's just a genuinely nice guy. So anyway, live music up there, but we get frigging hammered that night. I mean, Doug Johnson finally goes, but he's sick the whole next day because he's throwing up.
Wow.
So I outdrank Doug.
Way to go. You and the Mike's Hard Lemonade, huh?
No, the Long Island iced teas.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we had a great time. The Warhammer 40K couple was there. Doug, Todd, myself, Jeff had arrived. I mean, we just had a lot of fun.
Great.
So much fun. I had a real hard time getting up for Day Fighter the next day and showed up too late. And I just finally decided, you know what? They're underway. I'm going to drop out of this. Jeff, let's go play some Kill Team.
Yeah.
Jeff had not played Kill Team yet. So we play around a Kill Team in which he wins. And he's like, this game's super fun. I'm like, yeah, you think?
Yeah, there's part of me that's like, wait, why had Jeff not played Kill Team yet? Like,
I think he very much wanted to.
Okay.
I think the groups he is around are not really, they're kind of
wrong.
burned on GW.
Oh, okay.
And
fair enough.
And so we played a game, we re-racked and played a second game, which he very much enjoyed as well. And that's where I learned, these Reavers are pretty good. Like, we knew Primaris Marines are pretty good in Kill Team. When you couple them with those Reavers and such, pretty awesome combination he had going. On top of doing stuff like having a guy with Auspex and all this stuff, I was like, that's very clever. Jeff has always been very smart at kind of combining certain functions.
I had no idea he hadn't played it. That's right in his wheelhouse.
So then Sarah Kaiser, who does a lot of the cartoonish looking art that you see she and I have been chatting back and forth for a while, and we get along great. And I'd been watching her build this board, and I didn't realize she was bringing it to Nova. It's a terrain board and all this stuff. It's beautiful. She does just like the most amazing and creative stuff, and she's so funny.
Right.
She's so funny, and like she'll like for her Kill Team guys, she literally draws in one evening like artists on the back of the Kill Team card. Like she'll draw a character for that character.
Right.
And it's some are cartoony and some are really cool looking. Like she has one of each, like one that's silly and one that's really cool. Her stuff is painted and she'll tell you, this guy has she was playing her Death Watch. Like this Death Watch guy, he has like this heavy bolter that's possessed by a demon and he can't stand looking at it. And that's why it has like these wraps around the front because he's trying to keep the mouth of the demon closed. And all like she's got like this names for every guy.
So I got to meet Sarah when you when I was graciously your date for the Warhammer Heroes event. Sarah was there and she was talking about her Thousand Sons Kill Team, where the pictures are on. Basically, they're made to look like tarot cards for each of them. So, it was so cool seeing in the community page. And
I think those were all like watercolor painted and stuff, right? Weren't they?
I don't remember to that. I just really remember talking about it and being like, that sounds cool. And then to get to see the photos of this new kill, so neat. So she's so skilled
talented
at what she does
and super friendly.
Yeah, if you don't get along with Sarah, that's a you problem.
Yeah. So we were going to play, and I thought I was going to play her Thousand Sons because at that dinner we had talked about future Thousand Sons versus past Thousand Sons.
Oh, right.
And how
that's
that
right,
would be a fun game. But she wanted to play her Death Watch. So great, no problem. By the time we get our game together, she'd gone out and stuff. I was like, look, if you're too tired, it's fine. She's like, no, I really want to play. Let's meet. So I go up to the bar area where she is and meet her, and she's got the table all set up and stuff. I said, okay. And I realized like pretty quick, like Sarah's trashed.
Nice.
Like she is super drunk. She still kicks my butt. I did not win a game of Kill Team the whole event I was there. But we had the most fun with this game and just like talking smack back and forth to each other the whole time. She's so nice. So we just had a great time. And that was kind of the last game I played there. But yeah, she just crushed me. Well, that's not true. I killed a few of her guys and stuff. But in the end, she pretty much handled me while drunk.
Well, thank God she was drunk. Otherwise, it might have been really
or maybe she plays better that way.
It might be like when I play pool. I feel a lot better about it if I've had a few. So can I ask you the $1 billion question?
Yeah.
Are you done talking? Is that the end of Nova?
That's the end of Nova.
Okay. So let me ask you the $1 billion question. As Nova, I was I was sad that like, man, that looks awesome. But then more sad that I had the realization, long as I am a teacher and work in education,
You can't make those days.
Nova's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's
You going to Adepticon?
yeah.
You're good.
Okay. Well, that's the $1 million question, right? Is we love Adepticon and that experience. I was blown away
so much.
And Nova, we've covered that Gen Con is a different thing and probably not for.
If I had to stack rank the big three here in the US,
yeah,
it would be Adepticon, Nova, LVO. In that order. Adepticon, Nova, LVO.
Gotcha.
LVO is not for me. It's super competitive.
Right.
Like I feel like you're getting sized up when you're just walking in the hall. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I mean,
it's just not my cup of tea. But I see why people like it.
Sure.
Like without a doubt.
Yeah, it's a great way to play the game.
And I'm also super over Las Vegas. Like I used to go there a lot in my 20s and 30s. I just can't do it in my 40s. So.
Yeah, and I'm going to be there in the future. So
Yeah.
Raiders, baby. Anyway, sorry.
Just get out.
Okay.
So Nova was fantastic.
Right.
The people were very friendly. I had a good time. I have nothing negative to say about it. Adepticon is larger, significantly larger than Nova, but Nova takes up a good amount of space. Like you are not want for something to do. The Adepticon vendor hall is significantly larger. I don't know what it is. For me, look, you're not going to go wrong going to either of these events. Guarantee it, any of them. But for me, Adepticon is, and I think it's what Dan and Campbell said. Like they've kind of developed this pod and community of people that they like to hang out with. I don't know that it's quite like that for me, but there are people that I only typically see at Adepticon or get to spend a lot of time with at Adepticon, and I love that flavor and atmosphere. Dave Taylor is one of those guys that he and I have become really good friends, and I see him at Nova, so I got to hang out with him at Nova for a little bit, but he was very busy because he's involved in the painting, judging, and all that stuff. Right. At Adepticon, he's not quite so involved with that, so we can hang out more and goof off. I feel like at Adepticon, I have more choice on the type of events I want to play.
Okay.
There's crazy, like the narrative guys go there and do crazy stuff. There's smaller events, bigger events. I have Space Hulk.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
There's so many choices of events, and I can try so many other things there. There were certainly more demo games at Adepticon than Nova. It's just a good fit.
Right.
It's a good fit for me.
And
like Cinderella's slipper, it fits perfectly.
Right. And I think for those who haven't listened to Dan and Campbell talk about Nova, I think there's an element of maybe had you gone to Nova first, you would feel exactly the reverse.
Quite possibly.
Because they talk about, you just feel so comfortable there. You know who you're going to see there. You're going to, for me, that we have a local small, all things gaming convention that just, I go every year and I just feel very comfortable there. So I think I'm sure I'm not the only one who is curious.
Yeah.
That comparison.
Again, I'll say you cannot go wrong going to either of these events. For my personal taste, that's how I would rank them. But other people may go, you're insane. LVO, Nova, Adepticon, right? But for me and for what I enjoy and for the people I get to meet and the industry people I get to hang with and the tournament organizers I get to hang with, like I got to play Call of Cthulhu with Matt Weeks running the game last year. Matt and I have become very, very close and good friends, and we share, information back and forth throughout the year as it draws closer. He tells me what's stressing him out, and I'm like, oh, hang in there, please don't stop Adepticon. So for me, that's where my bread is buttered. But I would go to Nova again.
Sure.
It is a flight. It's a long flight, but it was worth it.
Yeah, and I mean,
it was worth it. I'm glad I went.
If you haven't done DC, that in and of itself is worth checking out. DC is
the food around the area is really great. And another thing they do at Nova that I thought was really cool, because they don't have like the food vendor services there, they get a bunch of food trucks to show up.
Gen Con does that, and it's
so you
amazing.
have like 5 or 6 different food trucks to choose from, and they are busy. And and good. Like
Yeah.
it was good food. I mean, it's not good for you, but it was good.
You're at a
food.
convention.
But you can also walk. There's several restaurants within walking distance, and we tried some great like Mediterranean stuff. And,
Awesome.
And yeah, it was well worth going. It's a good time. Mike Brandt and his folks know what they're doing. They run a good event.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, I mean, I've never heard anything
Nope.
but positive.
Yeah, it's all positive. It's all good.
So what else? Because
Okay, so the last thing is I went out to Warhammer World. I was actually supposed to play another Kill Team game. I dragged my Kill Team out there with me in my little small thing. There's a new guy working for the community team. He had reached out to me and wanted to talk to me about some stuff. And I said, well, let's get a Kill Team game in. And I had also double booked a game of Aeronautica Imperialis with Justin Hill while I was out there. And so I realized, oh my God, I'm so sorry I've screwed this up. But I spent probably an hour with this guy kind of discussing various community related things and stuff they were interested in, wanted to know where my head was at. And then I played Justin at Aeronautica Imperialis. And Justin was like, do you want to play the new version or the old version? Because he had been playing the old version a lot. And I said, oh, well, you know what? I'd like to play the old version because I never tried it. And I'd like to do a comparison thing in the future. And I haven't played the new version yet either. So we played the old Forge World version of Aeronautica Imperialis, of which there's 2 hardback books. If anybody has those books and is looking to sell them, please let me know. Because, spoiler alert, that game is super fun. Super fun. I don't know how the new one is yet. I'll see when I try it. The old one is not played on a hex grid. It is played measuring, and you have these cards. It's very X-Wing. Mm-hmm. Like it feels kind of X-Wing-ish, but there's some really cool things in it, and the rules are maybe 4 pages of rules.
Wow.
Like,
oh, I didn't know that.
Yep, it's super short, and then you're like, got it. And everything else is just stats on vehicles. The planes are a little bit different size than the new ones. But the thing that appealed to me about it was you don't need the hex map. You can just make terrain and play on that terrain just like 40K or something. And they have some cool examples in the books and stuff. And I really wish I'd picked those books up at the time. I mean, it was just super fun. It's clever.
And I haven't played it. I'm reasonably aware of it rules wise.
I liked it a lot better than Battlefleet Gothic.
Well, that
still holds up. I know. No, you say your opinion.
Okay. Just not a Battlefleet Gothic fan. But
you're not, but some people are very...
Yeah, love it.
I tried it, and I'm like, wow, these really feel dated. The rules for this did not feel dated.
No, and literally what I've heard over and over and over is the game is fantastic. It was too difficult to access as a player. Just that
I can understand that.
Special order only, and the planes were, because at that time, Forge World cost-wise was pretty expensive, and the books were expensive.
It's still expensive. It's just the rest of GW's caught up with it.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Both things are true.
You don't recognize the impact now. Yeah, I mean, there are obviously issues in that capacity, but boy, was it fun. Boy, was it. I was really impressed with how well it worked, and I'm really disappointed I didn't get into it earlier. Oh. It's very intuitive. The game does not take particularly long. It's one of those things where you pick how you secretly pick how you're going to turn, and what if you're going to go, if you're
change elevation,
climb or descend, if you're going to do a special maneuver, whatever, and then you kind of turn those over, and then you perform that maneuver, and where you wind up is like, oh, I didn't guess right,
right.
Or I didn't anticipate he was going to do that. So it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
A lot of fun.
Very cool.
Yeah. Okay, so that's my games played.
All right.
How about you?
Not as exciting as yours.
Okay.
That was a lot. I just stayed home and played. Okay. No, but actually I played one game that absolutely needs to be talked about. Matt and I continued our private, that sounds terrible. Our narrative. We're doing a very narrative focused, and by that, I mean, there's a lot more I could go into about what do I mean by narrative focus, but literally picking units based on the story that's unfolding. And making decisions about deployment and missions, and like it's story first.
What logically makes sense at this point.
Right.
I mean, okay.
And the story we'd been going with was revolving around this imperial biologist who had been captured. So a biotech.
Okay.
And has some information about the cult thread and that gene thread and maybe something that can help. The sisters had recovered him and they were taking him to the extraction point was this new mission. It worked out really neat. We did a mission with some hidden deployment where we both ended up using hidden deployment. I posted this is quite a while back now, but I posted a battle report where it worked out that the pictures I took made what looked a lot like a battle report from the magazine, like way the dice were laid out on the table. Mm-hmm. Like I took a picture of that and it looks like this hypothetical deployment situation. Part of the narrative for my Canoness is that because she's been around so long, she's older. She's more tactically attuned and is about like empowering the sisters than like being a beat stick. That's not her deal. Right.
She's like the Betty White.
Yes. More. I imagine her more like Blanche, though. Okay. A little more sassy.
Golden Girls references.
Yeah, we're not dated at all. So anyway, so the mission unfolds. It comes down towards the end. Matt had these aberrants push up the flank early, and they wreck shop as they do. And this one aberrant came from end to end, long end or short edge to short edge, long length of table from down in my deployment all the way back around to the other end.
Yeah.
And we were kind of running short on time for the game, but we were also at the apex of the game. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just run off the board because I had to get a certain number of, basically a number of power level off the board along with the biologist that they were escorting him to the extraction point.
Okay.
And the Seraphim came in very late and were the last line, so to speak, of like, okay, we're pulling back. We've pushed through the ambush. It was literally
they'll kind of hold things off while you
that they jumped into the backfield as we pushed through the main line. It was basically down to this aberrant that had run the length of the table almost in both directions, which was kind of funny. A locus and I think it's called a hieromorph. It's like their tactical leader. Basically just the few of them and the sisters had pretty well mopped everything else up. And so I started pulling units off and came up really short on actually the biologist leaving because the aberrant caught my Canoness and somebody else. And they were like, run for it. You'll be fine. And didn't really think through that, like, you're probably not going to outrun Gene Stealer cultists to a 12 inches away objective when they're 18 away and you're 12 away. They're probably going to cover that gap. And they got him.
That's kind of neat, actually.
And so the sisters started withdrawing, thinking it was okay. And that little 12-inch gap right at the end, these units swooped in and got him. And so our next adventure, we actually need to build some terrain for our next game because the way the story is working out and what we came up with for the next phase is the Gene Stealers are basically going to be on a defensive position while they try and get him to. Now they're trying to get him to an extraction point, and so now it's the sisters, instead of setting up an ambush, are going to be assaulting a strong point where he's going to be extracted. But yeah, the real punchline to the whole thing is Matt won.
That's great,
and that was his first
first win against you.
No, period.
No, he's beat me.
Okay, at 40K.
Okay.
It was his first win at 40K proper. Okay. Partly because he keeps playing Josh, and I told him to stop it.
Stop beating your head against the wall.
Yeah, that's not going to go well for a while, but it doesn't for me. But yeah, it was really cool. It was a great game. It was a lot of fun obviously we worked together, so neither one of us have had time for a whole lot, but very much looking forward to what is the next step in that story. So we have our mission designed, and I'm looking forward to you and I designing.
Yeah,
I have a funky statue you got to come desecrate.
That's right. That's right. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's take a break. We're gonna come back. As I said before, this is kind of a shorter episode as we do an almost hour-long hobby progress section. But this is I want to talk briefly about something that I came across that I didn't know existed before. And then I have an interview with Justin Hill that is recorded in Bugman's bar. So the audio quality is not the greatest there. I apologize for that, but it is a fun interview until the guys at the table next to us start scraping their chairs against the floor, like completely just oblivious, or just not even caring. But I think it's a good interview. We talk about a lot of different subjects about what he's writing about Imperial Aeronautica and that kind of thing. So we'll be right back.
Hey guys, I'm Caleb.
And this is Kat.
And we are CK Studios. We want to invite you and your friends to come paint with us at one of our exciting and fun-filled Airbrush and Hobby Weekenders. Our weekend workshops are 2 days of intense hands-on training, working directly with and learning from some of the top gaming artists in the industry.
Whether you're brand new to miniature painting or an experienced veteran that wants to up your game, CK Studios has the workshop for you. Our workshops cover everything from learning the basics and building confidence in airbrushing, all the way up to creating that centerpiece model for your army or display case.
For more class info and our upcoming schedule, you can find us on Facebook at CK Studios Come Paint With Us, or register directly at ckstudios.bigcartel.com.
If you can't find a class near you, that's okay. Just contact us and we'll bring a workshop to you.
All right, and we're back. And before I get into the interview with Justin Hill, I want to talk about this item that I came across, and I'm calling a segment show and tell. Of which I want to do a episode kind of around a show and tell idea, which is I thought I knew everything that had come out for 40K. I really did. I kind of had seen it all, right?
Oh,
like I was like,
how exciting is this?
I've seen that. No, I've seen that. Yep. Got one of those, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't a lot to surprise me. My buddy Ed Brown, who used to be the head of customer care at Forge World, he's left Games Workshop a while ago. And John French and I went out to lunch. I was supposed to meet them for dinner. I went out to Belfast, was going to fly out to Nottingham Friday, meet them at a restaurant. We were going to have dinner. Next day, we were going to go play a board game at a local, they have like a game cafe there, which is really good. My flight gets delayed 3 hours. I end up missing the dinner. It was not the best trip I've had. But I do meet them the next day for lunch, and Ed had collected a couple things for me. One of the things he had collected for me was the Art of Warhammer 40K book. These were things he had that he was like, I really don't need them anymore.
It's a great book.
If you would like them, you can have them. So I have that over there, which is a cool book. I have several Art of 40K books. Yeah. But the other were these two items, which I had never seen before. And this one is called Tactica Imperialis, A History of the Later Imperial Crusades. I think this is about a 96-page book or so. This book, 96 pages, so you can square bind it, is written by Dan Abnett and Andy Hoare. I think it came out around 2006, 2007.
Yep.
And it details out in a very Forge World style.
Yep.
Several stories of battles and campaigns that are fought. The next book that I got.
What do you mean by Forge World style?
Well, I'll talk about that in just a
okay.
second. Actually, let's talk about that now. I find the Imperial Armor books,
yes,
when they tell stories versus the stories you read in a codex or what they call the studio, what we've always called GW Prime.
Yeah.
When GW Prime puts out a book like Vigilus, the best way I could say is if you read that book, it reads like a comic.
Mm-hmm. They're very hero-centric.
Superhero-centric and, I don't want to say unbelievable because they're all unbelievable. Right. But it feels very 4-color panel view of it.
Yeah, it's dynamic, exciting action
fun,
storytelling.
but it's very surface level.
Yeah.
When you read an Imperial Armor book, in particular Siege of Rax, in the Orpheus campaign, I always felt like those stories were way more gritty. They read more like a historical story or a pulp novel, right? There wasn't like the 4-color. They went a little deeper. They told the story from different angles as to what was going on. It's hard to describe, but there is a definite writing difference there.
It's, to me, in a very, not 100% accurate, but I think gets the idea across. It's the difference between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
The Hobbit is very accessible. It's a fun story. It's very action-packed. We go from one exciting adventure to the next as we go on this grand quest. Lord of the Rings, you got to commit to digging through it. Yeah. Like there are histories involved. There are layers of things, and in as much as you want to.
It's also darker.
Yeah.
Right?
It is rough.
Grittier.
And there are times where sometimes there's a lot of times where they're just walking and they're talking about things that might be going on or did go on long ago. And it's that that sort of macro versus micro view being like it's this panned back, but at the same time you get this sense of life in the trenches, also life on the fleet. And so I like your description too of historical. It feels like a historical
I think
text.
the other analogy I would draw is if you read early 40K fiction, right? Like Soul Drinkers novels or the original Ultramarine stuff by Graham McNeil, and you compare that to Talon of Horus, Black Legion, Spear of the Emperor, right? The latest Aaron Dembski, Bowden, or the first 3 books of Dan Abnett's Gaunt's Ghost series. Like they're just way grittier, like way well thought out, and a stronger vision of what it would be like to be in that scenario. Whereas the earlier stuff is, as people have called it, bolter porn or whatever. I call it bolter bros. It's just hey, how can I blow these things up in a different way?
Core 'em like an apple.
Now you start talking about like character motivations and hatred and love and complex emotions in a story. That's where I feel the differences. Okay, so we've dwelled on that long enough. Tactica Imperialis feels more like reading a Forge World book. And then following up from that is the Sabbat Worlds Crusade book, which I had never seen this before either. For those who are in the know, Dan Abnett writes all of his Gaunt's Ghost stuff in the Sabbat Worlds, which is a crusade which is taking place in the 41st millennium, kind of a little bit before, up until in 7th edition, a little bit before where the timeline ends in 7th edition, and certainly a little ways even further before the new 8th edition timeline. This book is really just kind of detailing out all the crusade area that Dan Abnett had written this for. I think this also came out around 2006-ish. I'd have to double check.
There was a series of these series not in the sense that they were linked, but they produced a number of these. I have in my personal Black library, I have a couple that I've saved that didn't meet the purge ever.
Well, that's really interesting because I was completely unaware of both these books. It's probably a limited run book that they came out with. I know this Sabbat Worlds book is actually quite valuable now. And I think they're going to do kind of a reprint of it coming up soon with like refresh stuff. But you can tell like they use actual pictures for some stuff and poorly photoshopped pictures for other things, including they also do some artwork and that kind of stuff. But like you can tell they've used a picture of some guy from maybe Prussian war here and then photoshopped like a cybernetic eye thing over his head. And, oh, look, this is an Imperial Guard general from, but it has a character to it that is really appealing to me. So I wanted to talk about Tactica Imperialis just a little bit, and I'll go in more into depth about this when I do kind of the show and tell show, because what I'm going to do is have basically everybody bring something that maybe is in their collection that maybe other people don't know about at this point. But one of the things that I really liked about this book is it details out, I think, 4 different kind of war zones, if you will, or other crusades that took place. And the first one was the Reef Stars, and it's this place called Naxos, which is a kind of backwater mining planet that's being attacked by these Dark Eldar raids. And I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. Like, you don't hear about, and they're calling them Dark Eldar at the time because it's obviously pre-8th edition. There's some cool artwork in it I hadn't seen before. They kind of detail out the attack that this place is under. And then I flipped to this page 13, and this is a picture I've seen before of Dan Abnett's Iron Snakes. So I quickly realized, Dan Abnett has written this whole piece, and it's written as a very historical account of the event.
Right.
And these Iron Snakes show up. There's 40 of them. They're fighting like 500 Dark Eldar. Clearly this isn't 8th edition. If it is, they've got a better shot at it. But in the previous edition, They don't. But what I really liked about this was immediately as soon as I realized, oh, wait, the Iron Snakes are making an appearance in this, I have read Dan Abnett's Black Library book about the Iron Snakes. So I kind of drew, oh, okay, this actually came out before that. So he had really thought this whole chapter out and thought out many of these things prior to writing that novel, which I always find really fascinating.
Sure.
It actually made me think, like, especially for the Sabbat Worlds, like how much of the Sabbat World stuff did he create so long ago and then write novels within what he had created?
Sure.
And what's fascinating is the second story in this book details out an action within the Sabbat Worlds, and he's referencing a bunch of the War Master's generals like Van Voigt's and these guys who have made appearances in his Black Library novels about these guys. Some long after this book was written as for a first time. So I just found that kind of fascinating too, because I'm like, oh, well, clearly it always amazes me when you realize he had a plan all along. Like these were characters. He just hadn't written about them in novel format yet.
Sure.
As a role-playing gamer.
That's where I was exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like a role-playing game supplement. Then later you see a novel come out about. He even goes into details about the Blood Pact, which is kind of his elite chaos IG army who train basically like Imperial Guard because they realize, okay, these hordes of berserker, chaos cultists are not going to win us the war. We got to get a little more organized for chaos.
Right.
But it's a great force. But here it's laid out all in detail, like all kinds of information about it that you probably haven't seen before. There's some new artwork that I hadn't seen in books previously. Just a fascinating read, and not easy to come by. Like this book is genuinely not easy. I was really shocked.
I didn't realize that those had become scarce just because, I guess. So
you were super involved in it.
I was going to say at the time that was one of my other apex, of play periods. So 15-ish years ago, 14, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing maybe 12 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. So very close to when this stuff came out. But when I got involved, I really didn't understand any of the lore or that kind of thing. People were talking Primarchs. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, no, that would be kind of the height, I think, of when Anthony and I were gaming around the original G3 group and his Khorne campaigns. And we used those books were a part of something we referenced a lot, is establishing the aesthetic of how stories would be told for our campaign. And it was that, exactly as you said, is a role-playing source book almost.
Yeah.
They're even if you go grab some, Greyhawk or whatever role-playing book, even if you're for Dungeons and Dragons, even if you're not playing in that world, that depth and detail is incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely
It's
something
exactly what they've written here.
Yeah.
I mean, the last one is the Black Crusade of Jihar the Lacerator, which is all, a Slanesh, Chaos Space Marine basically leading a Black Crusade, and it's just I was blown away. I was blown away by this book. And I think because, again, I was completely unaware of these. And I thought I'd seen it all at this point.
Yeah, I think the two I still have are the Armageddon book.
I have that one.
And then the 13th Black Crusade, I think.
Yep, I have that one too.
Okay.
So
it was specifically these two you just hadn't seen.
I had not seen these two ever before.
Yeah.
And so really kind of blew my mind that these existed. And I'm such a lore fanatic now. They're an absolute pleasure to read. I couldn't wait to get them home, and I was reading them on the airplane back. So
that and this is terrible podcasting, but that picture at the top, the Sabbat book has 3 separate visuals. There is some kind of horrific chaos entity. There is a star map, and then there is Gaunt.
That's Gaunt from Gaunt's Ghost.
In these horizontal blocks. That top chaos picture to me is
wicked looking.
One of the modern masterpieces of understanding the variance and horror
It's
that is
very
chaos.
Blanchett looking.
Yeah.
But like almost modernized Blanchett. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's what's his, a little Clive Barker meets John Blanche.
Yeah, it's a very interesting picture. It's like the thing has removed a mask that it's holding, and behind it is its face that's really just this open horror.
Yeah.
It's
a great image.
great books. I think that, as we go more into depth, I've just briefly touched on this, but I think we'll go like Forge World level into depth about, everybody brings something from GW 40K's past that we're going to go in depth on, and to kind of share that excitement, because seeing this, I used to have these dreams. Like, I'm so into stupid role-playing games and stuff. I used to sometimes even as an adult, I would have these dreams where I had uncovered in an attic old role-playing game materials that I'd never seen before. And like with Dungeons and Dragons, I have pretty much seen it all, right? I have played the game since it was a white box. So to be like, have a dream where you're like, well, I've never seen this before.
Right.
It's like you're discovering some treasure. That's how this was for me. So Ed, thank you so much for giving me these. It was truly a gift, and know that they are appreciated, and we'll have a place of honor here in the Astronomicon. So I couldn't be happier. In fact, when we do that, I think I might get Andy Hoare or Dan Abnett to come on and talk about helping me write this book. I know both of them enough that we could probably pull them in. So I think that would be really fascinating to hear like their thoughts, especially Dan's thoughts on the Sabbat worlds. I think would be a fascinating discussion. So so that's all I really wanted to talk about. We'll take a short break. I'm actually just going to pretty much launch into this interview I have with Justin Hill, who I also want to really thank for taking the time to drive to Warhammer World. I think he does like a 2.5-3 hour drive to get there. Oof. He came up there to just hang out with me. We have played 30K before together. He's an absolute gentleman, but also just a really fun guy and a listener of the show and such. So thanks for taking the time to sit there and jaw with me in Warhammer World and being patient while I was, having conversation with the community team. But I think you guys will like the interview, and then we'll come back and close out the show after that. So we'll be right back. All right, so I'm sitting here with Justin Hill in Bugman's Bar.
Live from Bugman's Bar.
Stealing a piece from Lords and Heroes playbook at this point.
Yeah.
Recording in a bar. But you can't beat Bugman's for ambiance.
Well, exactly.
So there's a bunch of guys sitting in the corner over there. I went over and they're playing the new Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game over there, and they just rolled up characters, and we're just about to start that. My buddy Doug is going to run it, and so I was kind of curious what their thoughts were, and they seemed pretty excited about it. So you and I actually just played through some Aeronautica Imperialis, the Forge World version.
The original
version of it, which I had never played before. And when I was coming out here, you had asked, do you want to play Aeronautica Imperialis, new version or old version? We had talked about it before.
Yeah.
And so I just got a run through with you, a couple games. Small games, just to check it out. And now as I was telling you, I'm disappointed in myself for not getting into this sooner. I do have to try the new one to see what it's like, and we'll talk about that on the show at some point, and we'll compare the two. But I want to thank you for taking the time. But not only that, now I got to find these books on eBay because
it's a great game.
It, really elegant for the small amount of rules necessary to play. Very quick playing. Very fun.
I mean, it's like 3 pages of rules.
Yeah.
We played kind of 3 dummy turns.
Yeah.
And you'd got all the rules completely. And you're away. And it's kind of like we were talking about BFG.
Yeah.
At Battlefleet Gothic. It's like a BFG rule set that works.
Yeah.
And it's fun to play and it's fast. And
much faster than BFG by a long shot. But I did like the mechanic of picking you secretly pick the maneuver you're going to do, in advance of rolling initiative, then you roll initiative, and then you kind of find out where you are, and you're trying to second guess your opponent and what they're doing.
So it's kind of like poker. You start putting your cards down.
Yeah,
and think,
yeah.
Oh hell.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, I'm in
exactly.
trouble.
So you've actually, the other thing I want to talk to you about briefly is Terminal Overkill, which is the book you've just released.
Yep.
And it's also come out on audio, I believe.
Yeah.
The book is all about Necromunda. Are you a big Necromunda player yourself?
You know, I'm not at all. I've never played Necromunda.
Okay.
But what I like is the kind of the human world in the 40k universe.
Okay.
So away from I remember when Dan Abnett was kind of the first person to do this with the Eisenhorn, of Eisenhorns poking around, rotting, leaking hab blocks.
Yeah.
And just to sort of see the Imperium away from the battlefield. That was
away from the Space Marines.
Yeah,
too.
away from Space Marines, away from the battlefield, which was really exciting because it was the first time we'd seen that. Mm-hmm. So I really get off on these kind of stories of the human experience of the grim dark future.
Yeah. What is it about Necromunda that you thought, I want to write a book about that, as opposed to, I mean, it's not like the normal society for 40k either. The normal Imperial society, at least what we wouldn't, I think, consider normal. I guess the people in that situation would consider it the norm, but it is a stretch to think there's these gangs with territory and they're all themed in certain ways. What was it about that appealed to you that you said, I'm going to write a book about it?
Yeah, this is a daft story, but I'll tell you. I play mainly now Horus Heresy.
Okay.
And I'd been to the Black Library Weekender a couple of years ago. I had a great time, and I thought I'd love to go to the Horus Heresy Weekender.
Yeah.
There were no option book slots left, or to write for them. So they'd had the Horus Heresy Necromunda Weekender at the same time.
Right.
And I thought, if I write a Necromunda novel...
That was a bit of controversy, too.
It was,
actually. That why are they encroaching in our territory?
Why are they watering it down?
Yeah.
Yes, I thought if I write a Necromunda novel, then maybe I'll get an invite to the Horus Heresy Weekender.
Yeah.
So that was my original idea. I thought, this is clever.
You backdoor your way in.
Absolutely. But then they took them apart, or they didn't have the two events going at the same time.
Yeah.
So that didn't work. But more seriously, it does tie in with this interest I have with the kind of human experience. And as a long-time Imperial Guardsman, Astra Militarum player, I always kind of like to think, well, where did my soldiers come from? What kind of worlds?
Right.
And so I remembered that the Necromundan spiders had all been gang warfare.
Yeah.
And in terms, so having those kind of initial ideas, but then it's nice, or it's a fun as a writer to not be in the kind of Chaos Imperium dichotomy.
Yeah.
To not have to make up a new kind of variant of Chaos cultists.
It's been explored a lot.
Yeah, exactly. It's been done.
Yeah.
And it's been done by some great writers. So Necromunda is a really kind of, it's fun for a number of reasons. It's not really been done much.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's new ground.
You had basically the Cal Jericho stuff, and for a while that was it.
Yeah,
really.
Matthew Farrier, I think, had written some things, but
Yeah.
they're all old.
Yeah.
Mike Brooks had done some kind of novellas. So it was still kind of open territory, and that is great. And it's I think what is really fun is making it really strong characters and kind of throwing them against each other and having sparks fly. And so Necromunda is great at that because you have no goodies or baddies.
Right.
You have kind of complex, kind of grey
Survivors
characters.
is all you really have.
Everyone's got to survive.
Yeah.
And you just kind of throw them against each other.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. Yeah, I recently took my first stab at writing some lore for this Titan that CK Studios was doing.
Was it War of Heaven, was it?
Siege of Heaven.
Siege of Heaven,
yeah.
that's it.
And it really became, for me, it was a telling point that whatever you're writing about, you better be passionate about it.
Yeah.
Because it totally dissuaded me from wanting to be a writer, to be perfectly honest. I was like, this is a lot of work.
Don't choose a Titan.
Yeah, maybe something else. But, I don't know. I mean, I was interested in the backstory, and I think I wrote a fairly terrible fan fiction about it, you know. But in the end, when you do something like that, you begin to appreciate the people who do it professionally a bit more. Jeff and I used to say back when the show was young, because we would attend events and people would complain about this event or complain about that event, and we would basically say, well, vote with your dollar. If you don't like it, don't go, or run your own.
Do it better.
Yeah, do it better if you're that, and. But it is a lot of work to run an event. It's a lot of work to do those things. And as I was writing this story, and I think I churned out like 9 or 10 pages for it, I realized, this is a lot of work. And honestly, it's not professionally edited either, which would have been even more work because it would have come back with half of that work line itemed out,
Yeah, and it often goes the wrong way. So you start it and have to throw away, chunks.
Yeah. Now you're writing other things other than Black Library novels.
Yeah.
You write some Viking theme stuff.
Yeah, I'm working on a series about the Battle of Hastings. So the last one that came out was called Viking Fire.
Right.
It's the story of Harald Hardrada, who's the last Viking.
Okay.
He has, a quick précis. He's dragged wounded at the age of 15 from his first battle.
Yeah.
He escapes over the mountains into Sweden, goes down through Russia to Constantinople. He campaigns in the Mediterranean. He leads the force that reconquests Sicily, goes back to Constantinople, fights for the emperor. The emperor is sick. There's a palace coup. The new emperor puts the empress away in prison. He blinds him, escapes, marries a Russian princess, goes back to Norway. And this is all before he's 40 years old. And it's a true story. So,
it's true. I didn't realize it was a true story.
Yeah.
What was it that drew you to that? And were you writing that before you were writing Black Library?
Yeah,
fiction?
so I wrote my first book when I was 23.
Okay.
We're talking about, I did kind of an English version of Peace Corps for voluntary service overseas for most of my 20s, and that was just to avoid being a management consultant or an accountant.
Sure.
And I wanted to write, so it gave me things
I thought
to
I
write
did too.
Well, you're podcasting as well now.
Well, yeah. Now I want to be on the radio or something. I don't know. There's no money.
So my first books were about China, where I was living, and my first novel did really well. Washington Post Book of the Year.
Wow.
Went to auction, which is kind of every novelist's dream. And
what does that mean, going to auction?
So it's when you have a number of publishing houses who all are bidding against each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So when it was in the papers at the time because it had a record-breaking amount for an unfinished novel.
Wow.
It was when they were throwing silly amounts of money at people.
Okay.
For new novelists. So that's how I got into writing. So I have that kind of more literary career.
Okay.
The historical fiction I was doing just because I'm really interested in the Viking period. I grew up in York.
Yeah.
Which is all Viking kind of settlement areas.
Yeah.
All the villages around where I live are Viking villages. And so I thought the Battle of Hastings is a great story that no one had really told very well in fiction.
Interesting. Okay.
But all this time, when I started playing, Games Workshop before there was Warhammer. So I've kind of grown up with the hobby, and I've always kind of thought, I should be writing for Black Library, or it's kind of silly, I'm not, but actually writing literary novels and writing for Black Library are very different skills.
I would imagine so.
Yeah. A literary novel could take between 6 months or 5 years to write.
Okay.
Whereas Black Library, certainly at first, they wanted to count everything in 3 months.
Wow.
Which was kind of beyond me, but they've kind of evolved now. I think kind of Aaron takes a year or a couple of years to write one.
Yeah. I think he's the exception to the rule.
Yeah. Well, they're always worth waiting.
What is the expectation on you when you pitch a novel and you say? Because I know a lot of times it's probably different from writer to writer, but for the most writers, they probably have an idea. They pitch the idea to Nick or whoever the editor is that they're working with and say, here's what I want to do, and let's assume it gets approved at that point. Yeah, that we think that ties in with what we want to do.
Yeah.
What is then the expectation on typical turnaround on that kind of thing?
I think it's really up to the author.
Okay.
I've tried to kind of...
When do you want to get paid?
Yeah, exactly. So you're paid on delivery at various stages.
I would imagine so.
So I would rather be an Aaron Dempsey Bowden than a Guy Haley.
Okay.
In terms of, I would rather write a kind of a fantastic book once every 2 years or a year and a half
as opposed to 100 books.
And that's partly because
And-
I can't be Guy Haley, because
Right.
I don't write fast.
I don't think anybody else
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
honestly.
If I could write to his standard that quickly, that'd be brilliant.
Oh,
but
yeah. And the interesting thing, and we were joking around about Guy earlier, and I was comparing them to the Soviet Union and the United States. Like, quantity has a quality all its own.
Yeah.
But when you can really, I can tell when Guy has had time and he's passionate about the thing he is writing about versus, hey, we're releasing this army,
We need
and we
a
really
novel.
need some novel around it. It's fine. And, you can see the difference in those two styles, even within the writer himself,
yeah.
which is like fair. I think that's fair, and they all suit a purpose. And we were also talking before about when I first got into this hobby, I was struggling to find content to read. Like, I had read through whatever it was, the Soul Drinkers omnibus.
There was a small list of things you had to read, really.
Once you read all that, it was, well, maybe a book will come out. And
Yeah.
now, I walked through the Black Library shop just a little while ago, and oh my
I think
god,
3 novels a week coming out.
it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I can't keep up.
No, and I used to keep up with all of it.
Yeah.
And it's just, and I feel like I read fairly fast.
And I kind of have to keep up because you want to see what other authors are doing. Because I think what is
Sure.
great at the moment is authors are really pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
So we're just talking about Mike Brooks' Rites of Passage, which is about navigator houses.
Yeah, I
which
read the back of that book, and I
completely
thought,
new.
wow, I haven't seen this before. In talking with John French earlier, he was talking about being in the Black Library event where that got announced that he was working on that, and they were in the back, a bunch of writers in the back, and kind of looked at each other like, son of a gun. That was everybody kind of thought, oh, I want to write about this, but here he's actually done it.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's really thinking, okay, which areas? Because at one point, I remember there was no other Inquisitor novels allowed because, Dan had done Ravener and Eisenhorn, and then suddenly they started opening the gates, and John and Chris Rake both did kind of Inquisitor stories. And I think those are the more interesting because, again, you get to kind of the human level. So that, in a sense, that's what Necromunda does, is it gives you room to explore.
Yeah, that's true.
The human world.
The difficulty about writing an Inquisitor novel now is, okay, so here's this Inquisitor and his retinue. How is this not Eisenhorn and the people around?
How's it building on
How
that?
am I different?
Yeah, exactly.
I spoke with John about that with his Inquisitor novels, and he said it's not easy. You want to differentiate yourself, but at the same time, those roles are filled. I think with Necromunda, you have some interesting options that we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to the book. What else are you working on that's coming up that you're kind of excited about?
What I'm writing at the moment is the sequel to Cadian Honor.
Okay.
Which is kind of the sequel to Cadia Stands. So Cadia Stands, I think, is being seen as a standalone.
Uh-huh.
But one of the characters from that, Minka Stan, she's a white shield on Cadia Stands, and then her series begins with Cadian Honor.
It's been destroyed. Get over it.
Yeah.
No. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I've read the first one. I haven't read the second one, but you're working on the third now.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is it that drew you to writing a female character for that particular novel, following that character?
Well, there's a story behind Cadia Stands, which was originally, it was before the blowing up of Cadia was kind of planned, and I'd written the Battle of Tyrok Fields as a kind of long short story from Osaka Creed's point of view.
Yeah.
And Nick was like, we really need a novel to cover this big battle. Do you fancy doing the novel, but from someone else's point of view? So I thought, okay, I actually looked at Dan Abnett's Necropolis.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good book.
I love that novel, and how he had lots of different character storylines being drawn into this huge kind of hive-sized cataclysm.
Yeah.
So I had a number of different characters around Cadia who were going to be drawn to Tyrok Fields and then sort of witness the battle.
Yeah.
And one of them was this pair of white shields, Arminka and her brother Tali.
Yeah.
I was about a third of the way through the book when I got an email from Nick saying, how's that novel coming along? Because the new fluff is we're blowing up Cadia. Would you be interested then to blow up Cadia? And I was like, okay, yes. No,
and then
but yes.
Cadia blew up.
Yeah. So I had to kind of scrap a lot of what I was doing and restart it. But the one character that's kind of stuck with that was Arminka. And I liked her as a character.
So let me ask you this, because I was talking earlier with you too. about Aaron's Emperor Spears of the Emperor. I always confuse the title of the book. And he had said he got, a quarter of the way through it and decided this is the wrong approach and rewrote a huge amount of it. When you started rewriting that piece or kind of scrapped pieces of it, do you keep that material that you've scrapped, or is it just kind of overwritten?
Yeah, I do. I tell you how I see it. It's like some people like Guy, if they're writing a novel, they know, say you're an archaeologist, he'll know exactly where his building is, and he'll first spade, will find the first brick, and then he's away.
Right.
Probably like Aaron and I imagine, certainly me, is someone says, that field has a church in it, or can you go and dig it up?
Yeah.
I will start digging, and I'll dig up the whole field, and it won't be till I find the corner of the church, like, here's the church.
Okay.
So I could throw away all that previous work, so now I've got my beginning. And then once you've got the corner, you can then, where the rest of the building
outline.
is. Yeah. So in a sense, I keep that stuff, but it's all thrown away because it's kind of, it's not very good, or it's not the story.
Right.
So you find, I write myself to find the story.
Interesting.
If that
that
makes
feels
sense.
like a lot of work.
It is. It's very unproductive, and it's completely the wrong way to do it. Be Guy Haley.
Okay.
So that's how it works. So often you spend time just writing into the characters.
Yeah.
And think, okay, this character's not very interesting. This other character is much more interesting, or they're starting to develop much more personality,
Okay.
which will work better. So yeah, you keep that stuff, but it's actually not that good to read.
Okay. Going back a few minutes, you talked about you were writing at an early age, 23, 24. Your first book comes out, and you had said, I always thought I should be writing for Black Library. Why wasn't I? When did you start writing for Black Library, and how did that come about?
It was, it must have been about 2010.
Mm-hmm.
I sent Shield Wall, which was the first of this historical series, to Dan Abnett for a quote. And he said, have you thought about writing for Black Library? Nick, they've got new management, Nick Kime has taken it over. You should send him an email. And I thought, okay, I'll do that.
So you knew Dan prior to that?
I don't think I did. I must have been known from the internet.
Okay.
I don't think I'd met him.
Yeah.
I'd met Graham McNeil at Games Days, because whenever I came to Games Days, I would go and say hi.
Which you would go to because you're a gamer.
Yeah, because I'm a gamer,
okay.
and I would chat with Graham. So I knew Graham fairly well, and I'd spoken to him, and I was a novelist, and we kind of talked about writing, even though we were doing quite different things.
Right.
So I think so that was it. So then,
was it easier to get into a position where you were writing for Black Library because you were a published novelist before? Did that help?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually at Games Day,
I have to imagine that helps.
yeah, I walked up. I think Mark Gascoigne was doing something, and I just walked up and introduced myself. Hi, I'm published novelist. I'd love to write. So that was kind of the in.
Sure.
So I was doing short stories for Warhammer. I did Golgfag Maneater.
Okay.
The ogre character,
Okay.
who was great. He was a really fun character to do. And then they blew up the fantasy world.
Yeah.
And I'd always really wanted to write 40K.
Okay.
So I thought, as a novelist, even though I'd written kind of medieval fiction, I actually thought the 40K universe was much more interesting than writing kind of gritty fantasy.
It's also so different from what you were writing.
Yeah.
It's
a break.
It's not just a step in another direction. It's a huge. Yeah. So it probably helps to.
It's not like historical fiction with magic.
Right. Exactly.
So I really wanted to do 40K. So that was great. I could then switch to 40K.
Okay.
And as Imperial Guardsman, typically you'd start with Imperial Guard novel, which is great because I was an Imperial Guard player.
Right. That's how they used to start everybody off. Right.
Yeah.
Write this IG novel, and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I got started. And first of all, again, kind of you start with some short stories, and then they give you a novel.
So how many novels have you currently published under?
I think 4 or 5.
Okay.
My first one was Storm of Damocles, which was a Death Watch novel.
Yes. Was it a Death Watch, or was it a? Is that one of the Space Marine when they were doing the Space Marine battle books?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those. They stopped kind of doing those, but I actually thought they were pretty.
I remember really enjoying the Tau, writing the Tau.
Yeah.
I got kind of strangely into them as characters. They,
Right.
they in an odd way, became kind of the heroes of the novel.
Right.
They largely got killed at the end. Sorry, spoilers.
As heroes do.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Death Watch novel. They're going to die.
It's not a town novel.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then I was doing Creed as short stories, and again, that was great. So I very quickly hit my niche where I was very happy in, and haven't really wanted to shift away from Imperial Guard.
Right.
Although it's nice now because I'm starting to kind of get into the routine and deliver. I'm kind of this novel I'm finishing in November. I'm booked up, to do another novel straight after that.
Oh, nice. With Black Library.
With Black Library, which is it's going to be under the horror imprint.
Oh, yes.
But
I've seen they've been doing that.
Yeah, and what's nice is so the Minkastan, the Akkadian novels, are set in a kind of gallows cluster.
Yeah.
That I've been kind of working on. It's a bit like kind of Dan Abnett's Sabbath Worlds.
Right.
So it's a big character from Akkadian honor. It's kind of his pre-story.
Nice.
So
is that going to be? Have you ever written horror before?
Well, I've written some short stories for them. None of them have come out yet.
Okay. Okay. Because it's a very different tone.
Yeah,
and one of the criticisms I heard of one of the horror stories, and I'm not going to mention who gave the criticism or what story it is, because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but was, they wrote this book, and that's okay, but it's not particularly horror. There's some gore in it, but I think horror is such a there's different kinds, but there's like broad strokes. And in a novel, gore doesn't really do it. It might in some movies, but even there, I think we've moved beyond that.
So horror is kind of odd because in films it's kind of gore and chainsaws and kind of splashing and quite cheap.
It can.
Cheap, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas I think kind of good horror fiction is kind of more disturbing.
Yeah.
And it was funny, I think it was Terminal Overkill that actually got me into horror because my editor was like, I've got some images in my head now that I can't get out.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And I think my writing naturally turns to kind of horror-esque.
Yeah.
And so he put me in touch with the horror editor.
Interesting.
Who then, I've done a couple of short stories which she's loved.
Is this the first time you've had kind of back-to-back novels where you're like writing a novel, but the next one's already prepped and loaded? That's fantastic.
And I had an email recently, saying, we're just thinking about books for 2021, anything
Nice.
you'd like to write about. So I put something up on my Facebook page,
Yeah, I saw that.
I'd like to, I think just in terms of getting, a readership, I think kind of Space Marines have to be involved somehow.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'd love to do something with a Space Marine chapter or Legion or, so we'll see.
Do you feel like are you leaning now towards writing towards some established Space Marine chapter, or are you looking at, I think Aaron took a step towards the Spears of the Emperor because he felt like, I'm writing the Black Legion stuff, which is established, and although he's putting his own spin on it, it is taking an established lore, and there's a box you have to operate within.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Spears of the Emperor, he can do whatever he wants. It's not an established chapter. He can make up everything, which he has, and it's insane.
Yeah.
If you get that special edition of that book,
Yeah, I've got it.
the extra material in that is insane.
Yeah.
So which way are you kind of leaning?
My inclination is to do a new chapter.
Yeah, gives you some freedom, right?
Yeah, so maybe one of the ones that was in the Badab War that hasn't really been dealt with much.
Howling Griffins.
Yeah, exactly. One with a great, paint scheme like Howling Griffins.
Yeah.
So for me, that's more interesting.
Very cool.
Because the other ones have been done. Although I was thinking about the kind of Alpha Legion.
Yeah.
I don't know if has anyone done a novel.
Yeah, there's one that just came out. Actually.
Okay, there you go.
I'm trying to remember who wrote it because I actually bought it.
Yeah.
And the Alpha Legion's an interesting thing too. I remember in talking with Alan Bly before he passed and John about Alpha Legion, they kind of felt like they had leaned too heavily into the whole espionage piece of the Alpha Legion.
Yeah.
Because at their core, fundamentally, they are Space Marines.
Yeah.
They have tanks. They have planes. They have guns. They're not just like super secret agents.
And in 30K Army List, they kind of their fluff-wise is they're good at everything.
Yeah.
And they do mass assault.
So I think seeing them in a different capacity, in a war footing, would be interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it would show people like a different spin on it. Not that I'm pitching that
That
to
was
you,
my.
but it would be kind of interesting.
That was my
to see.
inclination if I was going to do Alpha Legion. So I don't know. I mean, I just so enjoyed the Necromunda, and I'm so enjoying the Cadia stories.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether my niche is just writing kind of human stories set in the Grimdark.
Yeah.
Or because Space Marines are quite different. And
Yeah. And I think the thing, too, going back to Aaron, the first time I really saw him approach Space Marines was Hell's Reach.
Yeah.
And you looked at that, and I think he said he had looked at people with autism and that in exploring how can they not relate to humans and how do they relate to humans. And I think that was the first time I saw kind of a deeper Space Marine than I'm a killing machine.
Yeah.
You know, look at how awesome I am.
Yeah.
You know?
And he's kind of fundamental. I think in every novel he pushes
the boundaries.
the boundaries forward.
Yeah,
And,
I'd love to see you like explore boundaries like that too.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited about Terminal Overkill. What else you got going on that we can talk about before we kind of end the interview?
Yeah, so I think the short stories, a couple of horror stories, and again they're all set in the Gallows cluster.
Okay.
Which I think is quite fun to start building up.
You can develop it on your
stories that are interlinked in some ways.
Yeah. That's true.
So the character for this next novella or novel, horror novel, is probably going to be an enforcer.
Oh, nice.
So
nice.
again, so something new.
Yeah.
Because there's so many kind of parts of the universe we haven't explored.
Yeah.
People like enforcers. I did kind of think, I wonder if there's a Munitorum novel. You know, kind of a.
There was an Enforcer novel a long time ago.
Yeah, that's
There
a
was like
Necromunda
3
novel.
of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's Matthew Farrier.
Maybe, yeah. But I mean, look, the fact that we're struggling to come up with that novel tells you that it isn't explored.
Yeah.
Like I can point you to 10 Inquisitor novels right off right off the
Exactly.
top of my head. But I think that's fascinating.
Or something, even maybe like a priest. You know, one of these characters that they're always peripheries.
Yeah.
So maybe pick an Imperial priest and do a story.
Yeah.
What I really want to do is have really kind of strong, vivid characters.
Yeah. We are talking next episode about Inquisitor, about the Inquisitor 28 movement, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That is, and you'll hear more about how it's almost like an artist movement, exploring like the dark corners of 40K. I would love to see, and this is why I think that the book on the Navigator houses, when I read the summary of it, kind of appealed to me. I would love to see authors start to explore not just the battlefields and that kind of thing, but these twisted kind of visions. And I think this is where this horror thing can come in, that like John Blanche-esque type of stuff is doing. You know, where you have, I'm reading another novel outside of 40K right now that feels very Dune-esque to me. And I think that's where a lot of the, like, why would somebody do this to themselves and put themselves in this kind of, mechanical body or that kind of thing, it can be absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. And the human, kind of the consequences.
Right.
Consequences are also really important in characters in a story. They have to change because of things happen to them.
Yeah.
And the consequences of living in the grim, dark future.
Right.
Which is kind of hell.
I gotta tell you, there's a meme that's going around that's like, oh, what fantasy world would you want to live in? And it was like, Tolkien's world. People are like, oh yeah, that'd be great, and this and that. And it's 40K, and people are like, hell no. This is not an environment. I think, you talk about people having issues with PTSD right now, with anxiety. Like everybody in the 40K universe would be having anxiety attacks consistently.
It's like a cautionary tale.
Yeah, for sure.
Of how we don't want to end up.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Justin, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for showing me Aeronautica Imperialis today.
At all. Pleasure.
When we cover the new version, I'll be sure to get you on the phone and we'll talk about it. So thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you, Carl.
If you're a true follower of chaos, enjoy killing Tau scum, fry devilfish for breakfast, drink the blood of fire warriors, collect the bones of Kroot fodder, desecrate the cockpits of mantas with demonic sigils, sing songs of chaotic praise and joy, when berserkers chain axe overwatching broadsides, helldrake bellflame shield drones into flying discs of spinning fire, and just all around bask in the path to glory, then the Shrine of Chaos podcast is a must-listen for you. I'm Mini Wargamer Dave from MiniWargaming.com, and I invite you to be a champion of chaos. Listen to the Shrine of Chaos podcast wherever podcasts are downloadable. Thank you, independent characters, for allowing this message from the Eye of Terror.
All right, so thank you for listening to episode 194 of the Independent Characters. I recognize this is not kind of our normal format, and we've changed it up and kind of dragged it on a little bit. There's just been a huge gap. We are looking at getting back on schedule for the month of October. Our next episode we plan to do about Inquisitor. I'm trying to get a game in before we actually do that coverage. But I do have a lot of insights from people like John French on that, Dave Taylor, that kind of stuff. So I'm very excited about that episode. And I'm excited about that game, though not for the reasons you think I might be. So it'll be an interesting discussion, I think. Yeah, so that's me. Do you have anything you want to add before we kind of...
No, just community. Keep being awesome. Thanks, guys.
It really is. It really is. If you are a listener of the show and have not joined the community yet on Facebook and you're thinking about doing so, please check our website, theindependentcharacters.com. There's all kinds of information there about the community and kind of what our community standards are. We really reflect in that community what the show is all about, which is good play, good fun, good friends, that kind of thing. Anyway, we have the Facebook group, which we were just talking about, which is fantastic. We have the Patreon going on. We've just ended, I think, round 5 of the campaign, which I've seen kind of a drop-off of games in round 5, like a pretty significant drop-off of games. I think everybody's been kind of busy.
This is a tough time of year.
Going back to school, a lot of last-minute family stuff. So I'm hoping that picks right back up next month. I know I've got games lined up already. So get in there, play your games, because next month, not October, but November, is the second event of the campaign. I'm not going to reveal what it is here, but it's going to be pretty cool. And it's going to have a chance for teams to grab points that haven't grabbed enough points yet. So what else we got? Patreon. Leave us reviews on iTunes. I love reviews on iTunes. Haven't seen any in a while, but give us a fair review if you give us what you think we deserve. But we do appreciate hearing what your comments are as well. So if you leave a star, please write some comments. Tell us what you think. If you want to provide any feedback, you can do that through the Facebook group. If you're a member of the Patreon, you can reach me all the time on that chat channel in Discord, or you can just send an email to carl@theindependentcharacters.com. So lots of ways to get in touch with us.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, until next time, this is Carl.
This is Jody.
And we're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where just when you think you know it all, you find some new treasure.
And man, we're so glad you're back, Carl.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back too. This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.